our protagonist is running from some pursuers, but he continues to use those black eyes above him to gain an advantage in his fight. But then, even after defeating several, he continues to be pursued more and more, and he continues his killing spree, until he reaches a point where he falls to his knees with most of his strength exhausted. Then he starts to cough up blood with a very sad look in his eyes. At that moment, some people approach him, and a girl says it makes no sense for him to have made such a choice, asking why he allied himself with evil, because he betrayed all of them, calling the protagonist Nox Von Rin Harbor, and he gets to his feet, holding his sword with those eyes still above him. He starts to look at the sky, talking about betrayal, saying it's alright, that she can consider it a betrayal, but he wasn't the one who betrayed his friends, saying they were the ones who betrayed him first, and the girl says that's a lie, asking what he's talking about, or rather, why he's acting this way. Then he looks at her with a sad expression, saying he was forced, and so the game ends. And it's stated that he has completed the first part of Inner Lunatic, and the total completion is 27, and the protagonist says that this time it was actually pretty good, because he got several items and also got some achievements. But then he says that next month he doesn't think I'll be able to play this game anymore. And so, 2 years ago, the doctor speaks with Yotian, asking him to try to stay calm and listen carefully, revealing to the boy that he has terminal cancer, and so his days start to become a little grayer. And they ask him if he normally goes to the university hospital, asking if he's been having appointments at both hospitals, because she checked his file and says she can't give him a different answer, and all she can do is prescribe some pain medication for now, and he should try to take a little better care of himself. And so, the boy is in disbelief and thinks that it's already been 2 years, and when he looks at the calendar, he starts to cough up blood and thinks he's really going to die soon. And no matter where he goes, the answer is always the same, and then, he picks up his phone, noticing he doesn't even have anyone to call, saying that he thinks, in the end, nobody cares about him, and that's why he has no one to spend his last days with. That in fact he thinks he can't even go out like this, spitting blood everywhere. Then he sees a bunch of pamphlets about support groups for terminal cancer patients and gets angry, throwing them all in the air. At that moment, he looks at the game again and the system asks if he would like to start a new game, and he says that's the only thing he has to do. So, he starts creating a new character, wondering what kind of character he should make this time. Then he begins to choose the character's traits, saying that being a genius sensitive to magic, he can choose to be a genius of the sword and martial arts. But then, the system says that a penalty is given to the character for choosing 2 genius traits, and to remove the penalty, he must choose only 1 genius trait. Then it's stated that the penalty he'll receive is a time limit. He mulls this over, because just like him, the character will also have a limited time, and seeing himself in the character, he decides to create him, but as he's creating him, he suddenly has a shock, falls to the floor and realizes he's about to die. He thinks that he already knew his death was near, but he at least wanted to choose how he would go, and just like that, the character's name is forcibly chosen by the system, and the synchronization rate freezes at 71%, but the synchronization with the character is completed, and with that, the protagonist wakes up. As he gets up, he starts thinking about the place, saying there's a familiar feeling flowing through his entire body, and when he looks in the mirror, he realizes his premonition was right and notices he's in that damn game, having taken on the persona of Nox. He says that he's now this crazy character. A nonsensical phrase pops into his head with Nox Von Rin Harbor's voice, saying he was forced. He recalls that he is one of the 3 masters of darkness from Inner Lunatic. He was born into one of the most criminal families in the world of Lunatic, and is the youngest of 5 brothers. The Hein Harbor family. The Hein Harbor family has produced countless generations of geniuses in both magic and swordsmanship, and Nox is the only one in the entire family with no talent. It's said that being born without talent in either, he grew angry at the world and ended up forming an alliance with demons, ultimately becoming the greatest disaster in Lunatic's history. He thinks to himself that he's Nox, wondering if this is a dream, but then, the system starts displaying the boy's basic information, stating he's 14 years old with the darkness magic element. He notices a status window, but his stats are complete garbage. He wonders what's going on, since he only has 2 energy points and his negative traits make him a toxic loser. He wonders if this is the character he created, since it still has that time limit, and asks himself if he can die here too. He says he can't remember why, but on the surface, it seems pretty obvious. After all, he wanted a character who was just like him, with nowhere to run, like a boy whose only destiny is death, and he admits that, of course, he never thought a character like this could bring disaster to the world. But then he receives an unread message in his inbox. The system asks if he'd like to read it, And when he opens it, he sees someone is talking to him, calling him Chan, but then corrects themselves, asking if they should call him Noxy now. He's surprised by this, because he doesn't even know if his parents are alive or dead. The only thing left was the name they gave him, so he wonders if that was the name he used before coming into this body. After all, this person knows about the past he forgot before coming here. Then, the person messaging him says it's been a long time. He's surprised by this. And the person says the last 2 years must have been very hard, and that he deserved to at least come to this place and live. Then, they welcome the boy back, but he doesn't understand what they re-talking about or why they re-welcoming him back. It's only then that he realizes he's no longer in his own world. This is his new reality, and he's in disbelief. But the messenger says that although there's a lot about his identity, they can't tell him just yet, but they want to help him. The boy is skeptical, but the messenger tells him to enroll in Elden Academy. They say that there, he will build his strength and should try to follow the main story as closely as possible, because the whole truth will be revealed naturally. At this, the boy asks if that's all. But seeing that there's no reply, he tries to process everything that's happened. First, he was reincarnated as the final boss of the game Inner Lunatic, and now, he's supposed to follow the main story. He thinks that no matter how he looks at it, this just means he's eventually going to die. However, he also thinks that even if Inner Lunatic has truly become his reality, it doesn't mean he will give up on recovering his memories. He resolves that no matter the cost, he will follow the main story, along with his lost memories. He will discover what he's doing in this world and survive. He starts to get motivated, saying that for the sake of his goal, he's willing to become a true villain. Then he smirks, saying that now that he thinks about it, he hasn't changed much compared to his old life, and says that 2 years before he lost his memories, he was terminally ill, and every passing moment meant another step closer to death. He wasted his life living in fear of when he would die, so the only thing that changed was the setting to the world he knows best. Then he asked System, "What day is it?" And it's February 4th, 1812. He says this means he doesn't have much time, but then decides to immediately start his 28th attempt to clear that game. And with that, he opens the door, but the system tells him that a negative condition has been activated and, due to the effects of the constant illness, he has acquired a level 1 wrist inflammation, and the system asks him to rest and recover. And he already starts to feel that this is going to be a bit difficult. Man, the kid inflamed his wrist just by opening the door, and he starts walking through the castle corridors, already wondering what's wrong with this body because it's so fragile. Then a maid who was rushing by ends up bumping into the boy, dropping the plates and wondering who it is. But then she notices it's the young Master Nox, and the boy starts to feel even more pain, but thinks about her brown hair, light orange pupils, and wonders if this is Rona, and she starts to apologize, begging for forgiveness for committing the crime of hurting him. Then he notices that, despite her being an extra character, the only thing he remembers about her is her talking behind Nox's back. That's all he remembers, so he wonders if this innocent little girl was talking behind the character's back. Even though he's a villain, then he gets close to her, saying he'll forgive her this time, but he immediately makes a huge threat, saying that if she makes the same mistake again, so she understands right away, saying of course. Then he wonders why everything seems so quiet and, looking at everyone, he notices that they are all scared. He remembers that, supposedly, he's supposed to be crazy and starts to wonder what kind of life Nox was living. At that, Rona asks the boy where he's going so early. He says he's going to the training hall and everyone gets scared. He asks Rona to go with him too, and the girl gets even more scared, wondering if he plans to beat her. As they head to the hall, she keeps looking at him. But Nox thinks that first he needs to survive, because after having experienced the sensation of dying, he's sure now he doesn't want to die. And to survive, he needs to get used to his new circumstances as quickly as possible. But he starts to wonder if he'll have any chance. And the girl gets confused by him talking to himself, and he thinks that, as someone who has played this game 27 times, he knows most of its hidden aspects, and so, he quietly activates the status window and says that in the game Inner Lunatic, with a story that pits angels against demons along with the Empire, it has a huge fandom around the world. He says that the special part about the game was the large number of customizations, allowing different players to play with different styles, while lower-tier traits, like common and talented, can be assimilated multiple times. And in most cases, genius traits can only be assimilated once, and he says that using genius traits makes it easier to reach the top of that field. However, he possesses 2 of them, and in this game, there's a concept called a trait penalty, and when assimilated above your limit, you end up receiving one, but, by taking advantage of the system, which tries to analyze this for him, it's possible to assimilate 2 genius traits. the sword genius and combat genius. Then he says that it provides sword skills, and this allows the user to reach the peak of swordsmanship. And on the other hand, the mana-sensitive genius increases your sensitivity to magic, allowing you to be more efficient when casting spells. And he says that there are many others that are useful, like the main character's ability, Insight, which allows the user to see the status window of other characters, as well as the Master of Acting, which allows the user to easily act in any situation. He talks about the Steel mentality, which can be used in battle and enables the user to regulate their mental strength, keeping them calm. The only problem would be the negative traits. Then he says the time limit would be the worst of them. But the curse of weakness, the constant sickness, the cold and possessiveness aren't good things either. And he says he's definitely a walking hospital, and for people with the cold trait. Unless the users have a heat-related skill, it's almost impossible to step into a frozen area, and for constant sickness, he'll pass out at least once every chapter. And he says he has no choice, he'll have to take it one step at a time, man. I'm sympathizing way too much with this character, because my health is on that level too. My god, I'm loving this manhwa, while the boy keeps looking at the sun and thinking. Rona says they almost at the training room, wondering if he really plans on going in. But then she gets startled, looking at his face and noticing the boy is a little different. And then he starts thinking about the curse of weakness, where the player is cursed with the curse of weakness from birth. Their growth rate is reduced by half, and they will be half as resistant to enemy debuffs. So he says he'll need to get rid of this curse first. But then, when he enters the training center, he picks up a sword, lifting it, and says that no matter how much he thinks about it, he can only come to one conclusion: he's totally screwed, and he keeps swinging it, almost dying, saying it's like reading the beginning of a story, stating that this was the conclusion he reached after thinking a lot. And the boy collapses, nearly dead, as he can't swing the sword more than 10 times, because the curse of weakness is really making things very complicated. He says that at least there are a bunch of weapons available. He says the reason for this is that the Ring Harbor family's origin began with the sword. And when it comes to his family, among all the titles that describe them well, the best one would be High Class of the Blade and Darkness. And the reason they earned this title was because of their ability to imbue dark mana into their sword blades to finish off their enemies. And he clearly visualizes a member of his family, saying that this was all thanks to the commander's blade, also known as the tyrannical blade of darkness. He says it has been passed down to each family head, and they continued the process of passing it from generation to generation. But he wonders what that has to do with him, because besides the Gagrama, there are several advantages to being part of a noble family, especially the money. He says money is the best thing, and the Ring Harbor family is one of the greatest noble families in history. Of course, this means they are extremely rich, to the point that even the useless youngest son has enough cash to never have to work. And he says it's as if Nox's father doesn't even care if his son spends money wisely or not. And to begin with, Nox isn't that type of character, as he is the youngest son of an aristocratic family. And his character archetype is very clear, and the boy is going to make sure to use everything. Then he gets up, swaying like a green twig, shaking like crazy. And he thinks that until Rona brings what he asked for, he won't even be able to run. And a few minutes earlier, Rona brings the towel, water, and the wooden sword he asked for. And she wonders if he's really thinking of exercising. Then he asks if anyone is around, telling Rona to come to him, and she questions it, completely frightened, almost crying, and he gets uncomfortable with this, but he asks her to lean in, telling her something, and the girl gets scared, asking when he's going to want to use that money, and says that all the ideas he mentions are trash. But she doesn't finish the sentence, and he tells her to shut up and get going, and so she remembers who the boss is, leaving right away, and thinks that he hasn't changed one bit. And when he's left alone, he says he doesn't know how fast Rona will be, but it will probably be there by tomorrow. Then he starts to drink some of the tea she brought, and says he needs to figure out a way to solve that curse and his stamina too. But while he's drinking the tea, someone appears next to him, startling him. And the boy notices it's the head butler Rodwell of Anarch, and says that since he is one of the main administrators of the Ring Harbor estate, isn't someone he can deal with as he pleases, and he's the aide to Nox's father, who is the head of the Von Rin Harbor family. So he realizes this is Rodwell, and the boy starts to tremble, thinking this must be some event he has to face. And he thinks that Rodwell normally wouldn't care about him, but he wonders if Rodwell noticed that something strange is going on, and the boy immediately thinks he has his own way of dealing with this, questioning what he's doing there, since he should be by the family head's side. Then, the positive trait Master of Acting immediately activates, and Rodwell says that after receiving his orders, He's there to give him some news, and the boy is surprised by this. And Rodwell says he's been told that he can participate in that night's dinner, and the boy is not happy about this at all, since he still hasn't managed to find out much about the family. They already want him to have dinner with them, but he asks Rodwell to tell his father that he can't, and Rodwell starts to wonder why the master ordered the young master to attend the dinner, and he says that the young lady of the Stiller family has come to visit, and it seems she came there to train as well, and he tells Nox that if he doesn't attend, the family head will certainly get angry, and so the boy understands, but Rodwell, looking at him, says that he's acting a bit strange, and Nox asks what he means by that. He says that he's never been interested in swordsmanship before, and that he noticed Nox went to practice in the hall on his own, and he asks the boy if he can ask for the reason. Then, Nox says he's going to make one thing very clear. He shouldn't dare to cross the line, being a mere butler, and he says that what he doesn't do is none of Rodwell's business, stating that he will make his own decisions. And Rodwell quickly bows his head, apologizing, and leaves the boy behind, and he starts to wonder if Nox has noticed something, saying that he needs to report this to the family head, and the boy, upon leaving that room, thinks that was chilling, saying he never imagined an event like this would happen. Then, he wonders what would have happened if the position had been activated, but then, he puts it aside, thinking about the young lady of the Steiner family, wondering what she was doing there, and later that night, at the dinner table, his brother starts saying that the idiot actually showed up, saying it looks like he didn't just come to eat. Then, one asks the boy if he still holds a grudge against the family, making fun of Nox, and those are Hats and Alan, the twins, his brothers, and one of them says he never thought Nox would show his face there, saying it's unbelievable. He asks his brother if he heard that the boy made eye contact with the maid, saying he's a lost cause. But during this, Nox thinks that he didn't even do anything. But, while he's dealing with this bickering, the maids open the door, and his father says it looks like everyone is here, and Nox recognizes him as the head of the family, and the one beside him introduces herself as Talia von Stiller, saying it's a pleasure to meet them all, and T says that the young lady requested night training. Therefore, she will be spending some time in their territory, and he asks everyone to make her feel welcome, and the boy thinks about Talia, realizing she's the heroine of Inner Lunatic and the character who opposes the future villain, Nox, and, sometime in the future, she's the one who will plunge a sword into his chest. Then T says he's surprised that Nox decided to show up too. Talia looks confused by this, but T says that since everyone is here, they will start dinner. And, during dinner, his brothers start whispering about Nox and tell their father they think it's about time he decided who will be the next to enter Elgin Academy. Then T agrees, saying that it is indeed time for him to decide, and the boy thinks about the academy, knowing it's the most important location in Inner Lunatic. And the academy students face all kinds of situations. They fight against demons there, which is the main storyline of the game, and he thinks that he has to get into the academy, because he needs to gather his own allies while keeping most of the original plot structure intact. Tay says he's sure everyone already knows, but the academy only allows 3 individuals from each family to enroll, and this is to limit the influence of the nobles, and he says that, since he has already used the first 2 slots on his first and second sons, now there's only 1 entry ticket left for the Hein Harbor family. Nox thinks that before making allies, he needs to get that ticket, no matter the cost. Then Tay says that's why he decided to follow his family's traditions. Nox then realizes he's suggesting a fight between the brothers, and Tay thinks to himself because he never imagined Nox would be the first to react. He says that's exactly right, stating that the date will be 1 month from now, and they will decide the next entrant through a duel in the training hall. And his brothers start telling Nox to keep quiet so he doesn't embarrass himself, saying that weak idiots like him, who have never wielded a sword, don't stand a chance against him. However, Nox remains cold and calculating, saying he can say that after he wins. Then, one of the twins asks Nox if he really thinks someone like him can beat both of them, and the boy says that this duel is another event he must face to get the entry ticket, and he doesn't have to listen to those insults, so he simply proclaims that he will enter Elgin Academy, leaving his father and brothers surprised. Italia speaks for the first time at the table, saying it seems the young master is confident, and he is startled by the girl speaking to him, because it seems he ended up catching the attention of someone he shouldn't have. Then, in his office, Tay receives a report and says that just like him, apparently there's something different about Nox, and Rodell agrees with him. And Tay says that if he hadn't seen for himself what happened that day, he wouldn't have believed it, and he wonders what caused this change, questioning if maybe the boy was possessed by a demon. But he dismisses that hypothesis, saying that the boy has finally caught his attention, so he tells Rodel to keep an eye on Nox, and, the next day, the boy starts running in the courtyard, catching the attention of all the maids, who are surprised to see the young master training. Then they say it's true, mentioning he has a duel in 1 month, but they wonder why the only thing he does is run. Then he starts to wonder why he can hear them, as he doesn't remember having a trait like that, and with that, his stamina stats increase by 0.1. He gets pissed off about this, but he answers their question about why he's running. He says it's because his biggest problem is stamina, and he says that the condition to use the sword and combat genius trait is to have a stamina stat above 4. And he says that unless someone is as weak as Nox, they should be able to use it right away. But with the curse of weakness still in effect, it took him 1 month to increase his stamina by 1.9. And he remembers that the curse of weakness reduces his evolution rate by half. And he says that after running so much, he only managed to increase his stamina by 0.1. And he says that since the time limit trait also reduces his evolution rate by half, he needs to work 4 times harder than other people, and he wonders why it's so difficult, but says that even with all this effort, thanks to the time limit trait, he can only reach a maximum of 15 stamina, but he thinks he'll worry about that later. Then Rona comes up to him, saying she brought all the supplies he asked for yesterday, and the boy notices that she was faster than he expected. So he says he should be able to make some progress now. Then he wonders how he's going to reach 4 stamina with a 3-headed Gorgon's poison, the dew of the memory fairy, a golem core, and the scroll of rapid stamina evolution. He says it's no problem and, of course, he'll just use all his knowledge to solve this. But then Rona asks what he needs all that for, saying that poison is hard to handle, and people usually avoid these things. And she tells him that the scroll is the only useful thing there. He says that's because nobody knows how to use these, and she asks, how do you use them? Then he starts by taking the poison and chugging a huge gulp, and Rona gets scared, telling him that's poison, and he says you can tell it's lethal. But the system tells him that he has consumed the Gorgon's poison and his health will temporarily increase by 1.5 times. And the 10-minute death timer starts now. At this, Rona says she's going to call the head butler, but the boy asks her to wait and starts eating the golem core. Then she says that core isn't for eating, but the system says he has consumed the golem core, and he will be slowly petrified. And it's stated that the hidden mechanism has been activated, as the 3-headed Gorgon's poison is reacting with the golem's core, and so he notices it's working and thinks this is it, recalling that the golem's core was originally used to petrify people, and thus rapidly increase its defenses. But its other use was to create artificial golems. However, when combined with the Gorgon's poison, then the special effect is activated, the poison is diluted, and the negative trait of the weakness curse begins to disappear. And the boy thinks this is perfect, as the curse that weighed on him the most has just vanished. However, he still has one more step, and just then, Rona asks if he's okay, but she's taken aback as the boy starts stripping in front of her. Then, seeing that he wouldn't stop, and the system announces that he used the dew of the remembrance fairy, and the petrification effects on the golem's core have disappeared. And the dew of the remembrance fairy is reacting with the golem's core, and the boy thinks that this is a strange feeling. And it's stated that the hidden mechanism has been activated, and the user will temporarily receive the trait, Blessing of Evolution. He says that, just as planned, it's working. He receives a positive trait, the Blessing of Evolution, and until reaching 5 in the stamina stat, the user's evolution rate will be doubled. Then he thinks that now there's only one left, grabbing that scroll and tearing it, and so he uses the rapid stamina evolution scroll, and the stamina increase rate will be doubled. And with that, he says he managed to eliminate the curse. And since the Blessing of Evolution is limiting the debuffs from the time limit trait, his evolution rate should be double that of most people now. This means he can quickly increase his stamina stats, but then Rona comes up to him, grabbing him, asking if he's okay, and says that he started taking off his clothes out of nowhere, saying she thought something. But the girl keeps crying, and he thinks that since the curse has been removed, maybe he should go easier on her. So he says that of course he's fine. However, she asks again if he's sure he'll be okay, even if she doesn't call the head butler, asking if he shouldn't rest for a bit. But the boy says it's all right. Then she asks what he's going to do, and at that, he says he's going to run, and once outside, he and Rona start running all over the place. Talia states that she doesn't understand, wondering how someone as weak as him accepted a fight against his brothers. But then, the maid says that she shouldn't look at the youngest of the Hein Harbors that way, saying it's rude to be like that. But she talks to Ima, saying that he doesn't even hold a sword and all he does is run, and even the other Hein Harbor knights offered to teach him. But he refused. So the girl thinks that in 1 month he's going to get a beating, and then it will be the end of everything. She says, that's definitely what's going to happen. But then she wonders why she's so bothered, saying she can't stand it and feels conflicted. And she tells the maid she'll be right back. And with that, she goes up to Nox and introduces herself to him. He wonders why she came to talk to him right now. Then he asks what she wants, as he thinks he's heard her name before. So Talia wonders what's with his cold attitude, betting that he's just surprised by her beauty, while she's having all these delusions. The kid doesn't understand a thing, and she thinks that's it, saying she needs to ask him something. Questioning if he's sure he can beat his brothers. Asking if that's why he accepted the duel, and the boy just watches her ask these questions, and she asks why he's running like this. Questioning if he really thinks he has a chance, and as she speaks, Rona agrees with her. But Talia says that if he wants, she's willing to help him. However, Nox quickly says no, he refuses, saying he's not interested, and asking if she can get lost. Then she asks how he dares to treat her like that, especially when she's offering to help him. And Rona thinks that if he talks like that, girls will hate him. Then she tells him to forget it, tells him to do whatever he wants, even bumping the boy with her shoulder as she passes. And Nox is left wondering what happened. So Rona questions if he really has no idea, then he thinks it just complicates things and uses insight on Talia to see her stats. The girl's stamina is at 6, mana at 3, luck at 5, dexterity at 7, and charm at 20, and her positive traits are incredible. And he says that no matter how he looks at it, these talents are insane, inner lunatic. Most adults have a stamina stat of 4, and the stamina stat she has is incredible. Even if it's nothing compared to the continent's 3 sword masters or the potential of one of the 4 archmages. But at the very least, she has the ability to reach their level, and he thinks she should be able to kill some demons with that fire attribute. And he says that the fire attribute Talia uses eventually evolves into white flames, and this is later used to burn the demonized Nox. But if he can make Talia his ally, the future story will change. He needs to find a way to follow the original story and still avoid his death. But, in the first place, he wonders if it's even possible to be on good terms with the person who is going to kill him. And so, 1 month later, Talia starts looking for the boy and remembers some people saying she's incredible because she learns so fast, saying that this is truly expected from the talent of the Steel Rainer family. And she thinks about this talent as her older sister looks at her while defeating her, and she, in turn, asked her sister if she could become a knight, saying that a knight must never be consumed by greed and must remain restrained while sacrificing themselves for the greater good. And above all, they must learn the ways and forms of the sword in order to become a true knight. And she starts to wonder if it will be possible for him to defeat the brothers who have trained for years just by doing cardio. So, she doubts he can do it, and with that, the next day, he stands against the first of his brothers, and she watches, while Teclia's first wife also watches, and he asks Rodwell what he thinks the outcome of this duel will be. But, as Rodell was about to give his answer, the announcer calls for everyone's attention, starting the duel, and after a few seconds, his brother attacks Nox at the first opportunity. Meanwhile, Rodell says that, considering young Master Allen's previous performances, he is certain that he will win, and says that's what he thought too. However, this statement leaves a doubt in Rodell's mind, wondering if the Patriarch is expecting a different outcome. He says it's true that Nox has changed, but he still doesn't think the boy will win, and he says that would be outrageous and impossible. Then, he says that he too once walked the path of a knight alongside the Patriarch. Sometimes, the art of the sword can be beautiful, but other times, it can be very simple, and that its level is decided by training time and how much thought they put into their art. And there's only one way for a person to turn the tables and make someone who was ahead of them kneel before them. And it's a wall that cannot be easily climbed, as it requires you to have an overwhelming talent. He wonders if, by any chance, young Master Nox was born with talent, but says the possibility is never zero, and well, he was born with Sangber. And there's still a chance that the youngest was born with the talent of a sword emperor. But, in that regard, the trait of sword and combat genius remains inactive, and Nox asks why he's so unlucky, since his luck stat is quite high, and says that in the end, he couldn't reach a stamina of 4, and even after all that progress, he only managed to get his stamina to 3.8, and at that moment, Rona, while running with him, asks if she really needs to keep accompanying him. And he says of course, saying it wouldn't be fun if she were left out, but corrects himself, asking who would take care of him besides her. However, she hears him say something else. But he gives her another task, but, looking at her face, he notices she's mentally cursing him, and she ends up biting her tongue while denying it. So he thinks she must have really good stamina too, wondering if he should take a look. However, when he looks, her stamina is at 4.5, and he's surprised by this, because a maid is stronger than a normal man, wondering, what is the deal with the Ren Harbor family, and notices she was born with a high stamina stat, saying that, meanwhile, he's been killing himself to increase his for a month now, and thinks that it's frustrating. So she says it's already getting dark. The next morning, she tells Nox he should rest. Imagine if he gets pissed off for being so close and thinks he's out of time. Then, in the duel, his brother talks to Nox, asking why he doesn't just give up, saying that even though he's the family's disgrace, he's still his little brother, and he can't beat him up too badly. But Nox realizes it doesn't really seem like his brother wants him to give up, and his brother says that's right, saying that to tell the truth, he wants to impress the daughter of the Steel Reiner family, and he thinks Nox can help with that. And Nox says he doesn't think that's a good choice, saying that Alan's stamina is 8, and that he won't be able to beat him using normal methods. And for that very reason, he'll have to use something hidden. As the judge approaches him, Nox thinks he's nervous, because if he loses here, it's the end. He needs to recover his memories, and find out who sent him that message. And a year from now he will die. And with that, with the start of the duel, his brother charges at the boy, but Nox barely manages to dodge his attack. However, his brother doesn't stop, with a sword strike kicking Nox's sword, knocking him away. And with that, the boy manages to defend himself, and his brother continues to come at him with everything he's got. And the boy thinks that this is the only consistent thing about the damage in the game Inner Lunatic, and if he loses here, he'll have to give up on everything, but if he wins, everything will get better. However, the boy's stamina increases during the battle, so he thinks that if he wins, he'll be able to have it all. And his brother starts to wonder what he's talking about, wondering if he hit the boy's head too hard, and says that maybe he'll feel better if he gets beat up a little. And at that, Fiklaya thinks to herself that she didn't even need to worry about the youngest one having a personality change, because the last child to enter Elden Academy will be her son, and, meanwhile, he continues to hit his brother. However, Nox still defends himself. But T says that what he's seeing is very pathetic, and Fiklaya says that one day this family will be hers. And T says he was looking forward to seeing how he had changed, but wonders if this is all he can do. Then Rodwell asks if they should stop the duel and says that if they continue, young Nox might take a while to recover. And Nox thinks that Alan and Hart's talents are good, but they were not all that great either. Compare the firstborn, Garen. He still has a long way to go, and he comments on the ability to have everything at your feet, and to subjugate an opponent with overwhelming power, the tyrannical blade of darkness, and T starts to wonder who he will pass this on to. So he thinks about stopping the duel, but Nox's stamina finally reaches 4 points, and, thus, the sword and combat genius trait is activated, and he starts to smile. Then his brother asks if he's gone completely crazy, and, at that moment, Nox activates the genius time skill and catches his attention. And with that, several clocks appear behind the boy. And Nox says he heard somewhere that time passes differently for a genius and a talented person. Then he realizes that this is a genius's time, saying that everything seems to be in slow motion, which is a skill that slows down everything around him, and the opponent's movement appearing slow and his own being faster are different things, so it's going to be difficult to use this skill completely. But since his sword and combat genius trait has been activated, it's over. And just like that, he easily knocks the sword out of his brother's hand with a single attack. And his brother is surprised by this, and Nox charges at him, thinking he's going to win this duel. And with that, after losing his sword, the boy's brother's wrist is sore. Then Nox says this is fun. His brother asks what he's talking about, and the boy says that, even so, he can't let his guard down, because the skill's duration is only 5 minutes. He needs to finish all of this within that time, no matter what. Then Nox says he was going easy on them until now, but tells his brothers that this is getting really boring, and for them to end this as quickly as possible, and tells them both to come at him at once. Then he speaks to his father, asking him to allow both brothers to fight him at the same time. Fiklaya is surprised by the boy's idea, and T thinks that his energy has changed. He seems to have something up his sleeve, and notes that it will be worth watching a little longer. And so he allows the two of them to go against one. And with that, he tells them to start, and the twins draw their swords, asking how he dares to humiliate them in front of their father. At this, the boy just holds his sword, getting into position, and when the two of them charge at him, Nox manages to block both of their swords. Then one twin tells his brother to approach him from the left, but Nox still manages to stop them both. And the system says that due to the special effect of genius time, the proficiency of the combat sword genius trait has increased, and so his ability keeps increasing. And he thinks that he can see the sword, and continues to hold back the two of them, until he manages to hit one of them, passing between the two of them, leaving them looking like fools. Talia is impressed by this, and her brothers just wonder how that Nox, the disgrace of the family, has changed so much and why everyone is making that fearful expression now. Then Nox turns to them and says he already told them not to get distracted during a fight. Lunging at the two of them once more, he says that even though there's something important at stake, just holding that sword is fun. Then his brothers start to panic and are thrown out of the arena, and just like that, genius time ends, and the boy notices it's over. Then Facilia calls for his sons, and the boy asks if the winner has been decided, and the judge says of course, declaring that the winner is young Master Nox Von Harbor, and the boys are in complete disbelief. And so Nox drops his sword, looking at his father, who says he's leaving now, simply walking away calmly. Talia becomes desperate, looking at the boy, saying she needs to talk to Nox right now, but then, outside, the boy starts coughing up blood. He realizes that, apparently, he used the ability for too long, and the genius time ability has a major flaw, and it seems that he receives a debuff status known as decline if he exceeds the ability's duration, and this debuff reduced his life by 2 days and 17 hours. He says it's the worst debuff, because it permanently reduces his lifespan, and makes him even more prone to illness. And he says he's already at his limit, and he's glad the decline didn't happen in front of other people, because if more people had seen it, his admission to the academy would have been cancelled. But then, Talia comes up behind him, asking if he's hurt, and the boy is immediately pissed that she saw him being sick, and he's still annoyed because, of all people, it had to be her, since he can't let T find out about the ability's decline, so he tries to speak to her, but she starts saying she's surprised he beat his brothers with that broken body of his, and the boy asks what she's talking about, and she says she thinks he misunderstood, blushing and getting all flustered. She says that what she saw last month was Nox never even holding a sword, and on the first day, all she saw was him awkwardly swinging a wooden sword. And the fact that such a person was able to win must mean he's talented. And she says she needs to ask him how he got all that talent and how he trained. But when all the duels were over, he was like this, all alone, so she wondered what was happening and why he was like that. She questioned if he really overcame his brothers just because he's a talented genius. And she concludes that this Nox isn't the useless person the rumors claim, saying he simply worked hard to be able to win. And this makes her eyes well up. Then she asks if the boy is okay again, but Nox doesn't let her get close, telling her not to touch him. He says he has to admit that for the past 2 years, he's been obsessed with games, so it's pretty hard for him to get along with others. However, she starts to apologize and the boy is surprised, and she says she didn't know he took swordsmanship so seriously. She heard he's been frail since birth, which is why he's only been doing stamina training, and she apologizes for misunderstanding him, and she says that acting useless probably wasn't what he wanted, and that people can make mistakes like that. So he wonders how he should respond to this, because she's very honest, just like in the game, although he knows she has the traits of a knight. She's the daughter of a proud and respectable family of 12, and it must have been difficult for her to admit to others that she was wrong. And he says that if that's what she thinks of him, then he asks her to please not tell the others about him bleeding, so she says of course she won't. And he thinks he probably doesn't have to worry about other people finding out about it now. And he asks her to keep her promise as he turns his back and walks away. Esundi, who's not even an Edzendary, looks more like Derry. Derry, whatever she is, starts to blush looking at our protagonist who has 1 foot in the grave. And at that, her father starts saying that his hunch was correct and asks what Rodwell thinks of Nox's talent. And he says that at first, he couldn't understand why he allowed himself to be beaten. But he says that among the children his age, including all the other young masters, he thinks he is the best of them all. And so, agrees, and he doesn't know why, but he thinks he still has some talents hidden from him. So he asks Rodwell to monitor his every move and do nothing but observe, no matter what he does. So he agrees to it, and T wonders if he has enough talent to inherit the tyrannical blade of darkness, as he says there isn't much time left, and he tells Rodwell that what he's doing is important, and so he says he will do his best. Meanwhile, the boy is already in his room, and the system says he has completed the tutorial mission, and he has cleared, win your first fight. And he thinks that this is a world that has become reality, but the game system is still there, and with that, he receives his reward. He ends up receiving 3 status points, and he notes that it's a jackpot. But he's pissed because he ran for a whole month just to increase his stamina by 2, and they should have given him this sooner. But he says the stat he needs to invest in now isn't his stamina, but his luck. His luck reaches 10, and he says the reason is because in the game, luck is the most valuable stat, and they will check its value now, and the system gives him the first clear benefit. 27 times was acquired, and so he obtained a random gacha voucher, getting a one-time use skill confirmation voucher. He said the benefit system is still there too. So he opens the gacha, and something that looks like a crystal ball appears in front of him. He says that seeing it in person looks very strange. And so he starts to roll, saying that when luck is maxed out, he thinks the chance of an intermediate rank or higher appearing is 95%, and he says that basic rank and below is white and intermediate rank is silver, and advanced is gold, but high rank would be rainbow. So he asks for a gold or higher, but then when the system spits the thing out, he notices he got a gold one and gets all happy. And when he opens it, he gets the identification rank, obtaining an advanced trait, Dread of the Supreme Ruler. He can't believe he got it, and the skill information appears. And the effect is that those with a total status value lower than his will have all their stats reduced by 20%. And he thinks he got incredibly lucky to think he would get a debuff skill. But he still has another reward, and the system asks if he would like to use the one-time use skill confirmation voucher. He says that the skill I'll get with this is already decided, and it's one of the hidden pieces that can be obtained in the Hein Harbor family. And for that, he needs a certain skill, and soon T will gather the brothers of the estate, and that moment will be when he will use it. But then he remembers something, wondering if it isn't time for him to go back to the estate. And it's been a while since the Elden Academy graduation ceremony ended. And he remembers Graven Hein Harbor, the second son of the family. He says that he must be in the middle of a trip for his night training. He has to find the hidden piece and deal with Gran, noting that there will be no time to rest. And the only good thing is that he probably doesn't need to worry about Thalia anymore. Then he says that she's not the type of character to break her promises. He also thinks there's no reason for her to get close to him. Yeah, my friend, I don't think you understand a maiden's heart. You can bet that girl is going to stick to you like glue. And with that, the very next day he's completely annoyed, because what he thought last night is not true at all, as the girl is already in front of him again. And he asks her if they didn't already settle everything yesterday, wondering what she wants from him. And she asks him to tell her how he got so strong so quickly. Oh, I'll give you a tip: no push-ups, no sit-ups, no squats, and running 10 kilometers every day, the part about eating in the dark. Staring at the wall, I will save for next time. At first, he tells her she was watching him in secret, ordering her to train for a month. So she asks about it, requesting at least a duel, and asking if he can tell her how he trains, and he thinks that, from what he remembers, Talha was a character who wanted to be acknowledged by her sister, so he turns and speaks to her, saying that before she asks him for something like that, or considers how he should train, she should first think about the talent she already has. But when she looks surprised, he thinks that he's never comforted anyone before, wondering what he should say, and he tells her not to compare herself to others. Then he leaves her behind, leaving the girl all flustered, and he wonders if she's going to come after him, since he doesn't need to let her see him and get the hidden piece, especially since she could kill him. And so he heads to the patriarch's family stable, which is famous for raising the best horses on the continent. Then Rodel asks if he was called. Then he says that everyone is there, stating he's sure they know why he called them, and announces that from now on they will choose the horse they will keep forever. And so the boy says he knew it, because it's finally time, thinking about the horses and how they are considered the most sacred animals, both on the continent and in his family. And if you decide to become a mage or a knight, you choose a horse when you were young to have a lifelong companion. An elder academy teaches horsemanship, and in another part of the game there are several huge wars, and he'll need to raise a new horse if his dies. Besides, transportation magic is very expensive, so he thinks that horses are a very important means of transport, so he definitely needs to choose the best horse. And so T announces that the winner of the duel, Nox, gets to choose first. He says he'll only give him one chance. So, looking at his frustrated brothers, he steps forward, and T thinks to himself that he's curious which horse he'll choose. Then he starts looking at all of them, thinking they're pretty cute. But the one he's looking for is right there in the back, so he walks over to the black horse, saying he'll choose that one, and everyone is surprised, especially T, who says he'll give him another chance. And Nox notes this shows they think he made a bad decision, but he opens the horse's insights and notes that its rank is high, and most summoned creatures are divided by rank and, depending on their evolution, can increase by more than one rank, meaning this horse can reach at least the highest rank. Furthermore, it's an obsidian, and it's the rarest of the various types that exist. The name refers to a type of volcanic rock, and he says that if the patriarch knew about this, he would have taken this horse for himself. However, it's not so tempting right now because of its negative trait, and its trait is death foreseen in 2 days, 16 hours, and 12 minutes. And he says that, in a way, it's a more annoying trait than his own time limit. So the boy says he won't change his mind and will choose this horse. And he says that with his knowledge, he can save it, but then asks why the boy would make such a choice, wondering if he's projecting himself onto the horse. He says that in the end his son is just emotional and weak, thinking he's a disappointment. Then he says he hopes the boy won't regret this decision. Turning around, stamping his foot and simply walking away, and the twins call out to him, and Nox wonders if his decision was really that disappointing, and then Rodwell approaches the boy, asking him to choose a name for the horse, and he quickly thinks of a name, saying he'll call the horse Call, saying it's the name he used when he played Inner Lunatic. It's a meaningful name for him. So the boy takes the horse to his own room, thinking he can't let others see what he's about to do. So he brought the horse there, and thinks its eyes look determined to live, just like his own, and feels the horse is struggling to live just a little longer. And then he calls for Rona, saying he knows she's out there, saying that if she doesn't answer right now, he'll get pissed. So she falls in, asking how he knew she was there. But the boy says he caught her, telling the girl to take care of the horse. And then she notices there's a horse on his bed, saying she'll be the one who has to clean up all that crap. And then he says it's a sick horse, asking her to do her best. And the horse starts to get a little nervous about the situation, and the girl says she'll take care of it. But Nox thinks this is a bit problematic, saying that what's about to happen will be a huge shock, wondering if Rona will be able to handle it. And so 3 days later, Rona starts crying, saying that Ka died. Then he says she's crying because it passed away, but well, he says she tried very hard to take care of Ka, but he already knew something like this would happen, and Ka couldn't be saved. He asks her to stop crying because she's distracting him, so she's still sad, but he tells her not to worry because it will come back to her side again. Then she asks if there's something wrong with his head, and he tells her to get behind him now. Then he takes out a scroll and places it on the ground. He says that if you apply mana to that scroll, then a spell starts to activate, and she wonders if he knows how to use mana, saying that it's illegal. Then he says he can't control his mana properly, but if she keeps distracting him, Ka will die for a second time, so this time it'll all be her fault. At that, the girl quickly shuts up, and he thinks he needs to concentrate, because he hasn't yet awakened his mana-sensitive genius trait. And he says that in this empire, it's forbidden to use mana before the age of 15, unless you be a member of the Imperial family. Because of this, compared to other students who start learning mana control later, the descendants of the Imperial family are much more mana efficient, and the only thing he can do now is pour as much mana as possible into this scroll. He can feel a very light energy in the palms of his hands and realizes that this is mana. Then he thinks it's interesting, because using the one-time use skill confirmation voucher, he can't make any mistakes, because now he's going to use the Book of the Dead skill, Necronomicon, which is designated as black magic, and so, a skeletal palm holding a book appears, and the target is revived as an undead. Then the system asks if he would like to use this magic, and the boy confirms that he does. And it's said that within Inner Lunatic there are 2 types of beings that possess the undead trait. The first are creatures brought back to life with black magic or dark human magic, and the second type are those brought back to life without an ego, and are reborn as a stronger being. They also remain blindly loyal to their master, almost to an extreme. The problem is that there's only one family that revives corpses as undead. That is Marvis, the family of shadows. Although Rin Harbor is also a family of shadows, it is also a family of knights. But the Marvas are a family of black magic necromancers. And in this case, players who don't belong to the Marvis family should obviously be prevented from using this type of skill. But he says no, saying that the one-time use skill confirmation voucher allowed him to get a Necronomicon, the so-called Book of the Dead, that they use. Then, several hands start to emerge from the ground, heading towards the horse. And with that, the magic is used and the boy starts to bleed. Then, Rona gets scared, but he tells her to shut up, saying he still needs to go on a little longer. And so he continues using the magic and suffers even more, saying his mana is running out. But then the magic is completed, and the horse gets up with its mane glowing. And the system says he successfully activated the skill. And so the horse starts to look at him, and the pet was revived as an undead. And with that, the boy thinks he succeeded. Then he talks to Ka and starts to check all its stats. And so the predicted death trait is erased and his pet will grow 1.5 times more than normal. And it would also be possible to summon, or unsummon, this undead, depending on the player's mana. He says he will be the horse's master from now on. But then Rona throws herself at him, crying a lot, saying she thought something might have happened to him, wondering how he could use mana so recklessly, and also talking to C, asking how he could be so careless. Then he turns his face away, but she tries to argue with the horse, since she took great care of it. and she offers it the spire carrot he gave her. Then the boy starts to see that things are going a little better and plans to get the next hidden piece. And so, a few days later, Kill is already walking through the night, starting to gather a bunch of things, and he says that, compared to the game, that road isn't so difficult. Then he says it's a good thing the Rin Harbor family's second hidden piece is an item he needs to get, saying that it's the key that will help compensate a bit for the time limit trait. But as he walks, he hears a noise in the bushes and gets startled, looking back. But then he wonders if he was being too sensitive. However, he thinks that this isn't a game, it's reality. Then he enters Maya's forest and, if small children enter there, they can get lost and die. So it's said not to enter, no matter what. And he says he doesn't want to die a second time. And the system says that he has entered the forest of lost children, and failure of this mission will result in the player's death. And he keeps walking, talking about this forest, saying that within the Hein Harbor territory, there is a forest where entry is forbidden, and no matter how skilled the hunters or guides were, because of the darkness and fog, they would still have trouble finding their way through there. And Nox says that, exactly as the name implies, this is a place that makes everyone get lost like a child, but it also has a different meaning. Even if a grown adult manages to kill a monster, he wouldn't get any artifacts from it, and when they are adults, the monster's difficulty increases, and he died a few times there to find the right way to complete the task. And that's why this forest's difficulty is at least 2.5 stars, since that is a game where the difficulty is the worst. And he says that when he played, he tried hard to complete this, even without knowing what items would appear, and he says that, stopping to think about it, this is the perfect item for the time limit trait. Then he quickly pulls out a torch and lights it, and when he does, the forest begins to light up, and he says that the crucial key to clearing the forest of lost children is the direction of the smoke, and to be more precise, it's the opposite direction from where it's going. But before going, he asks the person who's been following him how long they plan to hide, asking if it isn't time to reveal themselves. And at that, the person continues to hide and he notices what's happening, grabbing his sword and cutting through the vegetation, startling his pursuer. And a while earlier, Talia is talking to herself, saying she can't believe her beauty didn't work on him, saying that she just can't wrap her head around it. But then the maid comes to talk to her, saying she's begging her, please, stop following Nox around, and says that if she keeps doing this, she'll get a scolding too. And the girl talks to Ima, saying she will make sure she doesn't get fired from the family, telling her not to worry. But Ima says that's not what she's saying. Then at night, Ima thinks that Talia is already talented enough for people to respect her as the next matriarch. But of course, if Chell wasn't around, and she starts to wonder why she keeps feeling inferior to her own sister, and is being so impatient, and thinks that she has probably given up, and is sleeping now. But then, when she gets there, the girl isn't even in her room and Ima gets a huge scare, realizing right away that the girl went to find Nox. So she asks everyone to wake up, and the girl gets startled while following Nox in the middle of the forest. And he asks what she's doing there, but tells her to get behind him, startling the girl, pointing his torch at one of the monsters that had been following him. And they recognize that monster as a gray wolf, and she wonders if this is their territory, realizing she only brought a dagger to face it. Then the wolf raises its head and howls to the others. And the boy realizes that things are about to go south, but then he charges at the wolf, attacking with his sword. And the wolf dies quickly with a single attack, leaving his opponent stunned after such a clean defeat. The boy looks back, covered in blood, saying he thought his brothers would be the ones to follow him. But he asks what she's doing there, and she says she's just taking a night walk. And the girl really followed him wearing just a nightgown. Seriously. And he tells her not to mess with him, or he'll leave her there alone. So she gets desperate, grabs the boy's arm, and says, trembling, that she's not doing anything weird. It's just that he suddenly got so strong, and while she was thinking about how to become like him, she looked out the window and saw him. So, she got curious about where he was going, and she knew he had some kind of special training method. So that's why she followed him into that forest. And he says that now he's sure of 3 things. Talia thinks highly of him, and she's also not hostile. But to top it all off, she's a kid who doesn't know how dangerous it is to follow others late at night. And he thinks that since she's one of the main characters, he can't just leave her there, and tells her to follow him for now, but says he'll make one thing very clear: he's not trying to help her. He's just trying to resolve this situation so it doesn't affect his family in some way later on. At that, she apologizes, saying she was wrong, and he thinks she probably won't do anything dangerous again. But then she speaks to Nox, thanking him all awkwardly, but looking at the boy, she ends up seeing a pack of wolves behind him and realizes things are about to get a little more frantic. And with that, she starts to tremble with fear and Nox tells her to get away from him, saying she'll be in his way when he uses his sword. And he thinks to himself that despite these unexpected variables, he needs to focus again, because this is before the start of the game's events and, since it's an area within the prologue, there won't be any boss. But an elite monster, which is a lower level, will appear in its place or an evolved form of the Grey Wolf he just killed, the elite Grey Wolf. However, even if he knows his enemy, it doesn't mean things will go well for him. And there are times when they must realize they are possibly cornered. At that moment, a wolf leaps over the others at the boy, and he thinks he'll repeat what he always said back when he played Inner Lunatic and when he was still Yotian, saying he was a damn weakling. And just like that he manages to kill all the wolves, leaving the girl completely stunned, because she's sure he hasn't revealed his full power yet, since his swordsmanship was even more impressive when he was fighting his brothers. And she starts to wonder if he's killed grey wolves before. But then she goes back to thinking about his words, telling her to stay away, because she knows Nox thinks she's very weak. Then she starts to feel the atmosphere changing and Nox notices that it's finally here. A wolf much larger than the others, and they all surround the boy, the elite grey wolves, and outside the forest. All the guards are looking for both him and the girl. Then they find some tracks leading into the forest, and they are definitely Talia's and Nox's tracks. They realize the boy entered the forest of lost children with Talia. Then Ima is in disbelief hearing this, asking what they should do, because they need to go in there. But Rodwell tells her not to be an idiot, because that's impossible. So she asks what he's talking about, and he thinks it's because this is a forest that not even the Rin Harbors have managed to clear yet. And the Forest of Lost Children has one of the highest ranks within the Rin Harbor family, and despite being known as the strongest shadow family of the South, the fact that there's still a forest they haven't been able to clear is basically saying they incompetent. And of course, the fact that only people who haven't become adults yet can enter the forest, and that it can only be successfully cleared by Kai children hasn't been told to them yet. So he wonders why the young master entered the forest, saying he doesn't think he was bewitched by some mind-controlling monster, because, looking at those tracks, he definitely moved with care, and there's no trace of anyone having passed through the strongest mana barrier on this property either. This means Nox entered the forest because he wanted to, so he's surprised by this, thinking he was wrong. He can no longer deny it. He's not the weak and fragile Nox he used to be. Then he says there's only one way for the two of them to get back, and young M will have to use his wisdom and find a way out of the forest. And Ima keeps crying for her lady while they can only wait, and she begins to think with certainty that she was to blame for the girl's death. Meanwhile, Talia grabs her dagger to defend herself, and Nox notices that she still hasn't lost her concentration, despite being scared, and tells her not to do anything unnecessary, as she could get hurt, asking her only to stay out of it and save her strength to escape if she's attacked, and only then will she be able to slightly increase her chance of survival. However, he thinks to himself that, in reality, killing an elite wolf isn't that dangerous, but he just wants Talia to stay alert and be able to react to her surroundings, and seeing that she's acting just as he commands. He notes that she has learned very well, this, although she is not yet at a level he can trust to give him an opening, and for now, he will just activate Genius Time, and he says he's going to use this skill to kill them all at once. However, the wolves look at him, almost giving a smug smile. He's surprised by this, as the wolves leave just one behind to face him, and that single wolf charges at the boy and ends up defeated, and he notices that the others have stopped, so that wolf remains lying down and watching, while the others charge at the boy. He defeats them one by one. However, one of the wolves manages to flank him from behind, jumping on the boy, but Talia throws her dagger at that wolf, stopping it, and tells him to be careful. And she says that even though Nox told her to run if it got dangerous, she can't do that, and so she climbs a tree to help him, and he is surprised by the girl's action, and she asks if Nox is badly hurt. But he doesn't even have a chance to answer, as more wolves appear near him, and he kills them quickly and tells her he's fine, saying that this isn't a time to be so carefree, and she thinks it's good that he wasn't hurt. He worries if he showed her his pathetic side, but then he feels the decline of his skill has already appeared. But it's not over yet, as the last wolf, the boss that was lying down, gets up, and he thinks that it's finally getting up and prepares to attack the monster. But the monster just circles the boy, looking for the best opening to attack him. But then, the wolf takes the initiative and charges at the boy, but it ends up going straight past him, making the boy realize he's too slow. However, the wolf comes back and hits his shoulder, and Talia gets worried, while Nox wonders if this was really supposed to be a 2.5-star monster. Thinking they need to reevaluate this, Then he says that this elite gray wolf seems smarter and more cunning than the one in the game, and he thinks that this caught him by surprise. But he should have realized it when it controlled the other wolves earlier, and to think that it could also take advantage of the terrain and geographical advantages. And then the wolf comes from inside the woods at the boy, so he thinks he first needs to raise his guard. But as the wolf comes from the side, he tries to hit it, but the wolf stops and avoids the attack, and after pulling this fiend on the boy, it starts to attack. Then Nox thinks that he was already expecting this, that it would make a big move and show an opening, and with that, the decline comes once again, paralyzing the boy, and the wolf continues to attack him, and in the face of death, he thinks that he couldn't predict this, wondering if he got too excited, because he's cleared this game several times. And that's why he thought he could do anything, but then he realizes it was a foolish thought. However, the girl once again throws her dagger, saving him at the last moment, hitting the wolf's eye, and he thinks that if this managed to create an opening, then he can defeat it, and the person who created this unexpected variable wasn't him. And so, with the girl's help, he manages to plunge his sword into the wolf's abdomen, killing it with a single attack, and with that, he falls to his knees, suffering from the decline. And the other wolves that were still there end up running away in fear for having lost their leader. So she climbs down from the tree and runs to the boy, asking if he's okay, and he says yes, saying he survived thanks to her. But he stops to think. He realizes he just tried to thank his enemy, who will kill him in the future. I personally think he's too hung up on this whole "she's going to kill me in the future" thing. Especially since his character probably screwed up to deserve that, so he shouldn't be so hard on this girl right now. So he tells her not to worry, but she says he just got hurt, asking if he's sure he's okay. And he says it was just a scratch. She remains worried, but he says everything's fine, and she says she's glad he wasn't hurt anywhere else. However, upon looking at her own shoulder, she notices a gigantic spider there and starts screaming, so Nox thinks it's another monster. But the girl ends up throwing herself into his lap, and he's surprised by her sudden action. She tells him there's a spider on her shoulder. Then she screams again when she sees it still there. Nox asks how long she plans to hold on to him, wondering if she has arachnophobia, and says that if something like that little spider scares her, why the hell did she follow him into the forest? And she says it's a spider, asking if he isn't scared, and he says she clearly won't be able to become a knight. However, she yells no, getting up quickly, and he notices she's finally off him and starts to think. Then she asks if he's okay, and he starts to notice the decline is coming, and he says he had already asked her not to worry, and thinks that the girl did her part, and he survived thanks to Talia. And he thinks he couldn't say it before, because she suddenly screamed. But he thanks her mentally, and says that now they just need to get out of that forest, because he got what he wanted. And with that, while the maid cries thinking she killed the girl, Rodolph wonders if they didn't make it, saying that Miss Talia's disappearance will create a problem between the two families, since many children from this area disappear in the Forest of the Lost Child. And he says some people secretly say the Rin Harbor family is incompetent. And as he's thinking, someone starts telling him to look ahead, because the forest mist is dissipating. Then they notice the forest has been cleared, and she says she's not sure about it, but asks if it's what she thinks it is. The fact that the mana is rising, and so the butler says she's right. It means the forest has been cleared, and their only hope has become a reality. Then she starts to notice that Nox brought the girl back, and they are surprised to see so many people there in front of them. Rodolph, on the other hand, thinks he can't help but smile, because now he's sure that the hierarchy of the Rin Harbor family's descendants is about to go through a major uproar. Then Nox asks why everyone is gathered there, but Ima comes calling for Talia, saying they were very worried. Then Rodolph says that the family members were worried about the boy's disappearance, but he says he doesn't believe they were worried about someone as useless as him, saying that his family's reputation as a family of shadows is about to fall. But then the maid speaks to the girl, scolding her, saying she's going to tell her all about the 71 rules of the Steelheiner family again, asking her to follow her. Then the girl starts to apologize, but the maid says no, asking how he would dare to blame her, saying that the patriarch will teach her the rules personally. At this, looking at that maid, Nox realizes she must also have extraordinary stamina, just like Rona. Then she speaks to Nox, thanking him for protecting the young lady. But he says that even though he didn't intend to go in there with her, she managed on her own, and he tells her not to blame herself too much, and with that he returns to his room, thinking it's over and still surprised, because Rodolph was outside waiting with the knights, and he thinks that was too unexpected. But even so, he got the hidden piece, obtaining a new artifact. And that artifact is called the Ring of the Black Flame. Its basic information is that it's a low intermediate grade item of the darkness attribute and gives +1 stamina and +1 mana. And the ring's only requirement is that the person who uses it must have black mana. And he reads the special effect that when you defeat a target while equipping that ring, a very small amount of life force is stolen and ends up becoming his. And he says that the higher the rank of the defeated target, the more life force he will steal. And he says that the only artifact that can steal someone's life force is that black flame ring. But he thinks that, although just having this ring doesn't mean he will have a longer life, because a person's life can't be extended infinitely, and considering that only a very small amount of life force can be stolen, it won't be that easy to overcome the time limit. But he thinks that as long as he can fight and progress, this is much better than a hopeless life on the brink of death. He says he can feel his life force and mana increasing, and then he calls Rona, saying he knows she's out there, asking her to come in for a bit. And so she's surprised, asking if by any chance he can see through walls. He says maybe he can, and so she gets all flustered, saying that means he can also see her. So he asks what the hell she's talking about and gets a flick on the head. She asks why it seems to hurt even more when he attacks her with his finger. But he tells her to cut the nonsense and challenges her to an arm wrestle. And she's surprised he wants to do it again, asking if he'll still bet a raise in her salary if she wins. And he says he already told her yes, but if she loses, he'll cut her salary by 20%. And so they begin, and he ends up beating the girl, and she asks what happened, saying he should know it's not proper for a son of a respectable family to cut an employee's meager salary by 20%. Then he says that's true. But he's the good-for-nothing of the Rin Harbor family, according to a certain someone's rumors, so he says he's decided not to care about trivial things like honor. Then she starts to apologize. But while he's smiling, the system announces that the effect of the constant illness trait is activated, and he's received a level 2 fracture in his wrist and also caught a level 1 flu. So he gets pissed off by these negative traits and tells Rona that he'll cancel her salary reduction. But in exchange, she must bring him some ice and a wet towel. Then he says that, for now, he'll be satisfied with just getting the ring, since he needs to rest a bit. And he thinks he's one-on-one against her. But then he starts to remember the end of the game, seeing his older version, and also remembers his name, Yen. And with that, he says that the 2 hidden pieces, Ka and the Ring of the Black Flame, were already obtained 6 months ago. But, unfortunately, he still hasn't had the chance to use them, because he's grounded. Then he thinks that it's not like he caused any trouble. And he even cleared the forest of the lost children. He can't believe they grounded him instead of giving him a reward, wondering if this is for real. And he asks Rona if she agrees, and she says yes. But she's a servant who belongs to the family, so they'll lower her salary if she speaks ill of the patriarch. But Nox swears that, if she doesn't act the way he wants, her salary will be reduced anyway. So she says the patriarch is very strict, agreeing with him, asking how he could not understand how the boy feels. And he says he's been trying hard to adapt and have a productive life, while watching C's evolution. But he can't go on like this, because his life is being shortened at this very moment. Then the system says that the life he has left until the time limit is 147 days. And he says that this damn system is more interested in his life than he is. And he continues, thanking it for explaining so well. And he says he can't take it anymore, saying he's going to his father to get permission to leave somehow. But Rona gets sad, because she just finished heating his bathwater. And just then, there's a knock on the door, and Rodwell comes to speak with him, saying the patriarch is summoning him, and the boy is surprised by this. But then, a flashback begins of something that happened in the past, and tells you about the night of the massacre, when he faced many demons alone, and they all descended upon him. However, with a single swing of his shadow blade, he killed several demons that were coming at him. And he talks about the swarm of demons that was there, the humans who were caught by them, and the night of the massacre. And he thinks it was like a disaster, and, with that, everything comes back to his mind. And he says that someday one of his children will probably learn the tyrannical blade of darkness. He can't rely on probability. He needs a talent that is a sure thing, because one of them will have to kill him. And while he's thinking about this completely tragic future, Rodel arrives with the boy, and he says that Nox is late, telling him to bring him over immediately, and says that the Forest of Lost Children is a place that not even he knew how to clear, and to think that Nox managed to do it, so it would be appropriate to reward him. And the reason he's rewarding him so late is because of the strong objections from the family's vassals, as the report was delivered to him after a thorough investigation. He says that the vassals don't believe that Nox, the worthless one, has changed, and they started an investigation to verify if he was the one who cleared the forest. and he thinks that not even he can ignore the opinions of the family's vassals. So, the investigation was a necessary process, and so, Nox goes to the patriarch to pay his respects, and at that moment he tells the boy to raise his head, and immediately tells his son that he must already know his actions were wrong. And he says yes. However, T says that it's his job as patriarch to give credit where it's due, even if it belongs to a worthless one. He says he summoned him there to discuss his reward. He talks about just one request, saying he will grant the boy just one request, no matter what it is. And Nox is surprised by his father proposing to give him whatever he wants. He thinks that, even when he played in Lunatic all the time. This is the first time he's seen T give out a reward. He is usually authoritarian and stern. He starts to feel as if someone has shot him or cut him, because this must be a trap. He asks if it's really anything, and so, his father says he will grant him anything he wants, promising the boy, as the patriarch of Rin Harbor, that he will grant him any wish, swearing on the long history of the Blade of Darkness. And the boy affirms to himself that he didn't think he was being serious, but he thinks he is after that oath. But T reminds him that, of course, if his request is too ridiculous, his evaluation of him will change, and he trusts that he won't do something so foolish. And the boy says of course, asking for some time to think about it, and T agrees, saying that he will now allow him to leave the estate, but he is not allowed to get into trouble like before, and so the boy agrees, and T says he must always keep in mind that he is from the Rin Harbor family, and so, the next day, the boy goes out to see Talia, and she says that the next time they meet will be at Eldon Academy. However, he doesn't pay much attention to her, and she says she'll see him again, but he still remains annoyed. And Rodell comes up to him, giving him a nudge and saying that he should answer when a young lady asks a question, and he talks to her, albeit reluctantly, and says that if she becomes a full-fledged knight before then, and she gets annoyed by this comment, but he continues, saying she shouldn't get scared even after seeing a super huge spider. She gets worked up, punching the boy in the gut, and he thinks that maybe it would have been better to say wolves instead of spiders. She says that either way she'll be back after becoming a full-fledged knight, telling him to get his head ready for her. And so, the kid starts crapping his pants in fear, wondering if she intends to kill him, and Ima, for her part, is a bit more polite, thanking him for everything, especially Nox, and he asks what a maid from the Silhiner family has to thank him for, and she thanks him for saving Talia in the forest. Then, he says it's not like he did it because he wanted to, and he tells her to stop bothering him and just leave. Man, I gotta say, this protagonist is a real piece of work, a tough kid to like, you know. And with them leaving, he thinks that one person is gone now, but he wonders why he feels himself slightly getting used to this strange life, and says he doesn't know the exact reason, but he's enjoying it. But then, the system does him the favor of reminding him that the time limit is 146 days, and he thinks he has no time to rest. And soon, a few days later, Anna comes to him to say that he needs to get a new maid and new servants, and the boy only now stops to think about it. But Rodwell goes up to Nox and asks what's happening. He says that Eldon Academy sent a maid in training to assist him, and from now on, she'll be at his service. And that's why he came to introduce her, and she greets the boy, stating that from now on she will be his exclusive maid, saying her name is Ditri de Lavala. The boy looks at her, introduces himself as Nox, and thinks about this girl, seeing all her information. And he realizes through the system that her current mission is to monitor the player based on its orders. And thanks to this, he'll be able to be a bit more wary of her. And just then, the system again displays how much time he has left to live. And the boy thinks that when your time is limited, it seems to pass by way too quickly. The only positive thing is that he's actually leveling up really fast, despite having that severe penalty. But then, he also remembers that he'll soon be admitted to Eldon Academy, and Rona comes up to him, saying that in 2 months, he'll finally be attending the academy. So she asks if he's feeling nervous. In response, he asks if she's that happy she'll be getting rid of him while he's at the academy. But she says no, claiming she already misses him. However, the boy can tell it's a complete act, and says he won't be docking her pay. So he tells her to stop overdoing it, and she stops right away. And he says he doesn't even have time to mess with her, because within the next 2 months, if his stats don't improve even a little bit, he clearly won't be able to survive at the academy. And Eldon is the best academy in the Empire, so it's where the most monstrous cadets in the country gather. And after surviving that place, and the main storyline begins, he'll have to play the part of the villain, Nox. So, he thinks this sucks because it's so difficult, but, at the exact moment Rona is talking to him about his new maid, Rodwell arrives and introduces Ditri. Then, the boy checks her stats and figures everything out about her, and with that, he becomes more cautious, noting her current situation. She then says she'll do her best to support him, But he thinks to himself that he knew they wouldn't just let him leave this place as he pleased. And so, he thinks about T, recalling that he's one of the greatest villains and one of the strongest beings in that world. Many wonder if he reached his current position solely because of his swordsmanship. He is so skilled that few doubt that to be the case. However, the main reason T managed to secure his place as the head of the Rin Harbor family is because he is always suspicious of everything and everyone around him. And a few days prior, he spoke with Ditri, telling her he now has great expectations for her. And so, she agrees. T then says he heard she fell behind in the Lavaha family's line of succession, and adds that if she does well this time, the Rin Harbor family will spare no effort in supporting her as the successor. And she says she will help Nox with the utmost sincerity. However, T says that's not what he meant, looking at the girl menacingly, causing her to freeze. She then corrects herself, saying she will monitor him rigorously and will report every little thing to T. At that, he tells her not to forget who her master is. The girl is scared to death hearing this and thinks that from now on she can't afford to slip up, as she looks at a photo of two people inside a locket. Later that night, Nox thinks about the spy and figures T probably wants to confirm whether or not he's the real Nox. Since demonic possession is a common occurrence in Inner Lunatic, Nox is a character whose body was stolen by the number one demon, Ba, in the original storyline, and well, as long as T doesn't find out who he really is, everything will be fine. But then he thinks that Ditri is the problem, and he muses about the girl, saying that as long as she isn't involved in the main story, it would be a waste to just cast her aside, because she was originally supposed to become the head of the Lavalha family. But her parents were killed by her uncle, so she lost her position as the next head. What happened after that was obvious. In the end, she became a maid for the Rin Harbor family and managed to escape her own. On the outside, she may seem to be always smiling and cheerful, but her features show that she's already tired and drained, a character who is on the verge of breaking. So, her final decision before the first part of the main storyline began was to take her own life. So he wonders what he should do, questioning if the right decision is to change the plot and save someone who was supposed to die. And even though if he does that, it would be the same as wrapping a rope around his own neck. But then, the next day, he says that from that moment on he's gonna hunt monsters inside the territory's forest, and of course, the two of them will also go with him to help. And so, Rona is surprised by this, scared to death by what he said. However, Dutrier simply agrees to go with him, but Rona says she can't just agree to everything. Nox thinks it's normal for a maid to be afraid of hunting monsters. After all, this request is ridiculous, and he notices that Dra gave a quick answer, even though she was shaking like a leaf. And so, he talks to Rona, saying he already knows she's used up all her leave days. And with that, he says she doesn't have permission to take one today. And she starts to wonder how he could do this, and he asks if she's already forgotten. After all, he's a good-for-nothing and says that if she doesn't obey him, he'll reduce her salary and won't go easy on her, asking how about he starts with half of her annual pay. And at that, she asks if he wants her to bring a bow or a sword. And so, he smiles and Dutry speaks to him, asking if she can inform Rodwell that he'll be leaving the estate before she starts preparing. Then, he thinks it's all good, saying that for now his priority will be to increase his lifespan, since he's now free to go wherever he wants. And so, all three of them head into the forest and his father watches to see what his son wants to do. Then a few days later, in the Forest of Lost Children, which is now just a normal forest, wolves start to attack Nox, who easily defeats them. And so, he continues to steal the life force from those wolves and gradually gains more lifespan for himself. Then, he says he's already killed all the wolves in the area and wonders how he only managed to gain 2 hours of life from this hunt. But even so, he assumes he can consider this almost a success. Dutrier says it's been almost 1 hour since he started hunting, asking if he isn't tired, and so, he thinks, getting annoyed that the hunt took so long, because he didn't activate the genius's time, and that basically means he only gained 1 hour. He knew the calculations wouldn't be well balanced, but this is just too unfair. He says it's not like he can just keep killing monsters all the time, because his biggest concern is that there's a limited number of monsters there, and he thinks he's already killed most of them, since he's been hunting for a few days now, and at this rate, his plan to have a good life will end up going down the drain. But he thinks that not having many monsters nearby anymore is also a huge problem, and Dry says she can't believe he thinks that's a problem, saying that if other people heard this, they'd think he's a total weirdo. Then Rona asks what he's talking about and the boy looks at the ground, saying there's no other way. They'll have to go back to the mansion for the day, and Dra asks if she should heat the water for his bath, saying she'll prepare it at a very pleasant temperature, and Nox thinks that, as expected, she acts like a genius assistant, and he says he wants to take a bath before dinner, So he asks her to prepare everything, and she says she will with a huge smile. However, Rona tells Nox not to forget about her, because she's going to clean his room, and he tells her to do whatever she wants. And the girl starts to leave, all motivated. She's so cute, my god. Rona is being the best female character so far, and with that, Nox calls Dry and she asks what he wants. Then, he says he has a question and she starts clutching her clothes, and he asks the girl who she serves, and she freezes on the spot. And so, he talks about the genius assistant trait, and says that no matter how beautiful and magnificent a sword is, if he can't use it, he won't hesitate to throw it away. And so, the girl starts to hesitate in answering his question and Inox says that this, obviously, is her answer. Then she says she hasn't said anything yet, trying to make an excuse to Nox. But he says he already understands what she means and tells her not to worry, because he doesn't intend to question her anymore and says that, in fact, he's even grateful that at least she didn't lie and says that no matter who she serves, he will treat her as one of his own. And with that, the girl is completely shocked, and he says that in that case, if she, Nox wonders if, instead of mutual trust, it would be much better if they just made use of each other whenever they wanted. After all, that's already the kind of relationship he has with her, and so, the girl is left behind, deep in thought, and Rona, in her room, starts bad-mouthing Nox, saying he's very cruel, painting him as a little demon in her words, and says she has to train with him every single time. At this, she asks Dre if she doesn't think he's too abusive. The girl says that's just how he is, and thinks she's heard rumors about Nox changing since she was still in the Lavalha family, and she thought it was all made up, since it's rare for someone to change so much. But she was told that he defeated twins with a single blow, earned the right to join the academy, and on top of that, he also managed to solidify his position within the family, completely different from her, who, despite being a legitimate successor, had a terrible fall from grace. Then, she remembers what he told her that day, saying that she can use him too. Was that all he wanted to say? She wonders what he was suggesting with that, and a little later, a baseless rumor began to spread within Hein Harbor. It said that Dre was kicked out of her family, and now she no longer deserved to be a maid for the Hein Harbor family. And so, she receives a letter telling her to read it carefully, and she, the incompetent successor who sold out her family, will be held responsible for her sins, and will be stripped of any and all rights she possessed as a direct line descendant. And she thinks it also seems she won't be able to stay in the Hein Harbor family for long, and she already expected this, after all. Among the shadow families, Hein Harbor is one of the greatest, and even though she's working as a maid for a good-for-nothing, as a commoner who lost her family, she doesn't even have the right to serve him, and she thinks she will be fired soon, so she'll have to go serve someone else. And so, she walks smiling toward the other maids, and they all become uncomfortable. She notices everyone has already heard the rumors and says she's used to being looked at with disdain. But just then, Rona arrives calling for Dre, saying she looked everywhere for her, smiling at the girl. Then, she wonders if she either doesn't know about the rumors or is simply ignoring them. But then, Rona holds her hand, and Dre wonders if she's mocking her or if she truly considers her a friend, and, whatever the case, she's being a complete idiot right now. But she thinks that she, Rona, and Nox have always been idiots, and he says the end is very near, and besides Dre, T probably received the letter too, and Nox knows the crimes Dre's father was accused of were completely fabricated. But he also knows he's powerless to help her, because if he helps her survive, he has no way of knowing what kind of butterfly effect will be caused by removing her death from the main storyline. And so, during another of his hunting days, he continues his killing spree. And Rona asks Dre if she doesn't think Nox is being a bit aggressive that day, and she says he used to be a little more merciful in the past, but that day he's acting a bit strange. So, Dre is surprised by this, because it's making her uneasy. Then, he continues the slaughter and says it should be about time for it to appear, wondering if it won't come out today either. He says that in the Forest of Lost Children, there's a creature that randomly appears when only 20% of the monsters are left. The hidden boss monster. He says he was thinking of killing it, because he thought that alone would help raise his stats. But he doesn't think it will work. But just then, he feels an immense pressure and wonders what that was, taking a frontal attack that he can barely dodge. And he says this speed is on a whole other level. He realizes a hidden boss really should be like this. And then, the elite Wasp King appears. And he notes that this one is going to be a handful. But he thinks it's not like it's at a level he can't kill. But just then, Dre appears, jumping in front of the boy to take the attack. But he thinks that even if Dre hadn't helped him, it was an attack he could have easily dodged, and he wonders why she saved him. But he also wonders how many people would be able to run toward a monster that appeared so suddenly, and at that moment, The boy thinks he'll also have to use this to save her and activates genius time to kill the monster quickly. Then, in the past, Dieter starts crying in front of her parents. They ask why she's like this and is always falling down, and say there's never been a day when the scrapes on her knee were completely healed. And that's what her parents always told her, that her wounds never fully healed. However, this doesn't just apply to the wounds on her knee. It also applies to the ones on her heart, and she wonders if they foresaw this from the beginning, thinking of Nox when he asked who she serves. So, she remembers the various people who have passed through her life. Then, she questions who she should serve. And all these questions come to her mind with Nox appearing in front of her, trying to save her. And so, he defeats the monster and gets the rewards. But he tells her to hang on for just a little while, saying he'll take her back now that it's over. Then, she thinks that's a lie, wondering if that's what the expression of someone just trying to use her should look like. And she wonders why his voice is so shaky and angry. And with that, she passes out, and thinks this is indeed a problem, because based on Rad's investigation, the letter's contents are true, and the Lavala family has decided to disown Miss Dieter for good. And he thinks the reason he brought Dieter there in the first place was to take over the Lavalha family, since they lost the former heads of the house and are unstable, and he figured it would be the perfect chance to take control of them. For example, if the situation within the family is so unbalanced that the successor's position is this uncertain, should Rin Harbor get involved, they should somehow be able to overpower her. But he wonders what will happen if Dieter is kicked out of the family before he can execute any plan. So he says they have no choice. Asking what he suggests they do with Dieter, he says that while it's a shame, if they leave a maid who doesn't belong to any family by Nox's side, they'll be looked down upon by Eldon Academy. And he thinks they should handle this discreetly, and says he thinks the same. But then someone enters the room calling for tea, and Roddle asks who gave him permission to just walk in, and the boy apologizes, but says that Nox came in carrying an injured maid from his hunt, and she was poisoned, and is in critical condition. He used a very expensive antidote, without permission, that's why he came to report it. Rodwell asks if he used the purifying mandrake potion, and the boy confirms that he did. Then Rodwell says that would be really expensive and is surprised he got attached to this maid so quickly, saying that nobody knows what could come from such personal feelings. Then Rona calls out to her, asking if she's awake, saying she's so relieved she opened her eyes. She then wonders what happened, asking herself if Nox is safe, and also why she did what she did back then. And Rona says that Nox gave her an antidote, the mandrake one, and says it must be really good, because he completely ignored the doctor's refusal to use it, and told him to give her the antidote unless he wanted to die. And she thinks that good-for-nothing side of him must still exist, and so, the girl thinks about this antidote, wondering why he would do that. After all, he himself said he was just going to use her, so she gets more and more frustrated. And Rona tells her to get more rest, asking if her injuries are okay. She asks where Nox is right now, and Rona says he went to look for the head maid, but remembers he asked her to let him know if she woke up and says she'll be right back. And when she's left alone, Dieter thinks she shouldn't be there. The truth is, she knows she doesn't deserve to be in a place like this, so she packs her bag and gets ready to leave, leaving a letter for Nox, thanking him for saving her. But then, as she was sneaking out, Nox appears in front of her, asking where she thinks she's going. And at this, Nox remembers talking to the doctor, because even with a person dying in front of him, all he cared about was how precious the potion was. But he says that's not it, stating that if he doesn't have the Patriarch's permission to use it, he can't either. So he continues to lecture the boy. But then Nox asks him if the doctor's position in the family is higher than his own. So he says he's very sorry, and Nox says he will report this to his father personally, and tells the doctor to hurry up and give her the potion. And so Rona asks if she'll be okay, and he says that now that the poison is neutralized, the girl will be fine, which makes Rona happy. But as Nox leaves the room, he asks her to let him know when Dra wakes up, and then meeting with T, he asks what's up, since it's very rare for Nox to come looking for him, and asks if it's because of that maid. And the boy starts to get more serious and activates his acting mode, and reminds T that he had promised to grant him any wish he wanted. And he talks about Dra, saying he wants him to give her to him, even though she was disowned by the family, and T becomes thoughtful. But the boy says that, whether it's a butterfly effect that influences the main plot or M spying on the hotel, that kind of thing doesn't matter anymore. Today, he saw her trying to save him and realized something, the answer she hadn't given him before. And she answered him now through her actions. And the boy gets more and more serious. Then, T says he understands, saying that if that's what he wants, then he shall have it. So the boy stands up and speaks to the Patriarch, saying that this son of his Nox has just one more thing to say, and T tells him to speak. And at that moment, before the boy can utter his words, the effectiveness of the acting mode begins to decline due to his troubled state. Then he says that even if he is his father, he must, please, stop messing with his people. And so he leaves T behind and goes to find Drar, who was running away, and he asks where she thinks she's going now, and as she speaks tremblingly, she says she's leaving, saying she doesn't think there's a place for her there, and thanks him for everything he's done. But at that, Nox asks again where she thinks she's going, instead of helping as his maid, like she's supposed to, and she says he must already know the answer, saying she received orders from the patriarch to watch him, and that also includes deceiving him, but she starts asking him why he's trying to stop her, since she deceived him, and says she would have no right to complain about anything, even if they kicked her out right now, so she questions why he's being like this. And with that, Nox realizes what Dre is really like, saying that this side of her seems much more like a living person, a side that would choose not to give up, and would strive even if times got tough and dark. Then he says that, to begin with, people make mistakes often and it's common, but she says she committed a grave offense against Nox, and he says that's precisely why, and after making an insult like that, she just thinks she can leave without compensating him, asking who said she could leave. She's unsure about that, and he says that Dre will stay there, and he doesn't know what her father thinks. But he doesn't need the Lavala family name, he just needs her talents, so he says he wants her there, and tells her to stay by his side, helping him until she can make up for that entire insult as his maid. And so the girl gets emotional and starts to cry, accepting the boy's order, saying she will stay by his side until the end and will help him. And Nox says that's great, and she remembers when Nox asked who she served before, and he confirms he remembers it. Then she asks if he knows who that person is now. He says he knows. Now he knows. Then, in the morning, Rona starts bad-mouthing him again, saying he threatened the doctor, saying he was going to kill him, so she keeps gossiping. But then he shows up, telling her to avoid insulting him to his face. Then she asks if he heard everything, and the boy notices she's already given up on making the excuse that she wasn't insulting him, and only then does she realize her slip-up, but remembers to ask Dre if she's feeling better now, saying that she can't push herself too hard, telling her to leave the laundry basket with her. And just like that, the girl is still going at full blast. And at that moment, Nox asks why she's always causing trouble and speaks to Dre, asking if she knows she's going to Elden Academy with him in 2 months. She says yes, she knows, and has already made almost all the preparations for it. And he's unsure about these preparations, and she talks about basic things he might need: books, medicine, emergency items, a cadet's uniform and clothes for off-campus trips, and she also continues listing various things. Nox thinks that Detri no longer forces herself to smile in front of him, and he remembers the girl saying she was tired of pretending, and besides, she's not even good at it. He says it's much more comfortable with her this way, because they no longer have to give each other unnecessary compliments or engage in meaningless small talk. However, in a situation where they be dragged into a dead end, even if their backs are turned to each other, they won't betray one another. And he thinks that's enough for their relationship. Just then, Detri approaches Nox, asking if he's really okay, saying that some negative rumors about him have been spreading recently. And he's surprised by this, wondering if there are any rumors that don't exist yet, saying it's quite impressive that they could have worse rumors than they already did. Then the girl reveals that people are saying the reason he keeps her as his maid is because he likes her. He then says that's the reason, and is immediately disappointed in himself for feeling so ashamed while playing the part of Nox, and he apologizes for it, saying they've been picking on her because of him. But the girl says that wasn't the reason she told him, saying she just thought he might feel uncomfortable because of these rumors. But he says she doesn't need to worry, as she must have heard the old rumors too, and he's the useless, idiotic, and incompetent youngest son of that family. But the girl says it's not that bad. He says he'll fire her if she keeps lying, so she says she has heard those rumors, and worst of all, there were also rumors that he was a pervert, and the girl still has the nerve to ask him if it's true. And he starts dying of embarrassment, saying his current image is much better now. Then he says that before he was a reckless and useless weakling, but now he's the somewhat capable brat who does whatever he wants. But he thinks he still needs to find a balance, because in the end, Nox is the villain. And he says he must continue in this role so the protagonist can shine, because he isn't the main character of Inner Lunatic. So he tells her to forget it, telling her to stop talking about those rumors. Then he says he has a task for her, because as she must already know, for them to survive at Elden Academy, it's not just her who needs to prepare, he does too. And she questions what kind of preparations he's talking about. and he thinks that Dutri's stubborn trait shows how she is an absolutely reliable and determined person, and it won't be a problem if he reveals just a taste of his plans to her. And he says that it's actually easier to order her around if she knows more about him. So he says he intends to study magic before entering the academy, and wants her to help him with it. At this, the girl gets scared, saying he must know it's illegal in the Empire, asking if he still wants to do it. He says of course, but the girl bluntly tells him he's being quite shameless, but he embraces the role of a useless pervert, after all, and she says he's apparently resentful too, and says she understands, saying she's sure he made this decision for a reason, and will look for some basic books that can help him, and he thinks that's great, because she's competent, just as expected. Then he hears a commotion outside and wonders, what's all that noise? And when he looks outside, he notices some people saying they'll be in big trouble if they don't prepare properly, as they say that young Master Jen is arriving, and the boy is surprised, because he's finally back after graduating from Elden Academy. He almost forgot about this important event and says that the chance to extend his life has finally arrived. Then he speaks to Dutri, saying that apparently from now on he'll need to go on a mission far away. So she's surprised, asking what he's going to make up now. The scene cuts, and, at dinner, T says that Jen did a good job graduating from Elden, and the boy thanks his father and introduces himself, being the second son of T and one of Nox's older brothers, and he uses his status reading on the boy, with the information that he's 16 years old, possesses the dark magic element, and has his abilities. He has precise detection. He says that Guy is a lecher who likes materialistic women, noting that his brother is also a huge opportunist. He says the only reason Gray's true personality hasn't been exposed yet is because Nox was an even worse good-for-nothing. He's great at getting along with others in the world of politics, and he used his talent for political games to graduate from the academy more easily, as it's very famous. But it's also very difficult to graduate from there, and less than 1,000 people pass the admission tests, and among them, only half graduate. And T speaks to Gray, saying the departure date for Shaders must have already been decided, and the boy says yes, stating that he will go to the south of Shaders in 3 days, and says he's going there at this time of year, so it must be a monster hunting mission, and Nox explains about Shaders, which is located a bit further south of the Rin Harbor expanse. It's a neutral southern territory, and also borders the undeveloped Tagelim Desert to the east, and the boy says that besides being barren, it's also infested with monsters, so it's the worst kind of wasteland. And the mission Gray received from the Imperial family was to stop a wave of monsters in Shaders, because the Ark Empire has a rule where you must complete the first mission given by them in order to become a knight recognized by the Imperial family, and Gray says that when winter comes, Shaders gets filled with monsters, and it seems the Imperial family wants to take some initial measures against them. And T says that although it's a barren area, the other districts will also suffer if it falls, and, in any case, he must not tarnish the name of Hein Harbor. And the boy says he'll remember that, but Nox says this Shaders mission isn't just a simple monster hunt, and that it won't end as just a side story. And he says there are also several other, more complicated plotlines involved. Therefore, he can profit a lot from this, so he asks his brother if he's going to Shaders, and Gray says yes. And Nox quickly asks if he can go along, and he thinks to himself that, logically, to get that profit, he himself will have to participate in this subjugation in Shaders. Then, Gray asks what he's talking about, asking if he knows what kind of place that is. Nox found out it's a neutral territory, where monsters attack suddenly and irregularly, and where bandits secretly build up their forces, so Gray notices the boy is in the know, and says he's heard a lot about Nox recently. And Nox remembers the ability Gray has, precise detection. And his brother asks if it's true that he cleared the children's forest with the second daughter of Steel Heiner. And the boy confirms it is, and says that his ability knows when someone is lying. And if his target's status is lower than his, then he'll soon find out the reason for it. He says that, in short, this was the ability that turned him into an expert at political games, and at living in this world. And Gray says that, in that case, it must also be true that he defeated the twins and hired a commoner maid. However, Nox activates Steel Mentality in opposition to precise detection, and the boy says that's right, and Gray has accomplished many good things lately, but he can't let him, who wasn't even admitted to Elden Academy, accompany him on this mission, saying he'd rather not be the one to collect his brother's corpse later. But then, T tells him to wait, leaving Gray surprised, and T says he himself can guarantee that won't happen, telling Gray to take his brother with him, and so, the boy is surprised, but T says it's an order. Then he looks at Nox, saying that his family will provide the necessary supplies for this mission. He must make the necessary preparations to leave in 3 days, and Nox starts to wonder what just happened there, asking himself how he gave him permission so easily. Then, he thinks about T, wondering if he's planning something. And at that, Gray asks his brother what he's plotting, asking if he's really gone crazy. But Nox says that no matter how crazy he is, he wonders if he could possibly be even crazier than he already was. Then, Gray asks how he dares to make a joke and tries to hit the boy, who tells him he'd better be careful, because it would be a shame if he got hurt after getting a rare chance to go to Shaders. But, in the middle of their argument, Dieter ends up faking a fall, apologizing to Nox for being hasty, saying she'll wash that for him right now, and asking him to go back to his room. And so, Gr lets the boy go and he speaks to his brother, saying that his maid made a mistake and he's very sorry. Then, he excuses himself, leaving him behind, telling him to come back in 3 days, when they go for the subjugation in Shaders. So Gray gets really pissed off and, on the way, he thanks Dieter, saying that thanks to her he managed to get out of a huge mess. And the girl says he definitely has a talent for getting into trouble, but asks if everything will be okay, since Shaders is a bit tough, and he says everything will be fine. But then, Rona starts yelling, asking where he just said he was going, and he starts to question if she's forgotten who the master is here. He says it's already decided, wondering if the news of a good-for-nothing joining the subjugation in Shaders is really that shocking. But Dieter says that this time she's on Rona's side, saying she thinks the Shaders region is very dangerous, and there are hundreds of monster and bandit attacks in that place. He says that's exactly why he's going there, because this is his chance to increase his lifespan. And the boy tells them to relax, because he knows what he's doing and says he's going on this mission alone and wants them to stay here. But Dieter says she's sorry, but she can't let him do that, and she says that as his personal maid, she has a duty to help wherever he is and says she will accompany him. But then, he says she could get hurt, and the girl says yes, adding that the same goes for him, and says she heard from Rona that he's very weak and tends to get sick easily. And she asks if he'll really be able to make such a long trip without her. Also, he might end up forgetting his things, and besides, his clothes need to be washed. And so, she asks if he'll be able to do all that by himself. Then, he thinks that makes sense, because she mentioned some trivial details he didn't have to worry about before, when this was just a game. But he says that if he dies, Dieter will also have problems with her position within the Hein Harbor family. He thinks he has no choice but to let her follow him, and so he allows it. But she'll have to obey his orders, and will also need to learn how to ride C. But she says that's fine, because the two of them are already thick as thieves. And so Rona asks if she became friends with C, asking Dieter how she managed to do it. The girl says she spent half her salary to buy some high-quality sugar cubes for horses, and then he warmed up to her really quickly, and Rona starts to ask if hay isn't just as tasty. But the horse, a long day, and at the very beginning, apparently doesn't like it as much, and at that, she says he's a jerk just like his master, and then, he gives the girl a huge kick. He says that Rona will stay here and Dieter will help him, and since she's going with him, he needs her to prepare a few things. He sees that Rona was worried until now, wondering if she'll be okay. Then, while he's looking at the girl, Rodwell arrives, telling Nox that the Patriarch would like to give him an item. He's surprised by this, remembering that he said his family would provide the necessary supplies for that mission. And he wonders if this is one of those supplies, because, from what he knows, T seemed to be on his side at dinner. And he's sure that he's plotting something. And upon arriving in his father's presence, he says he heard T had something to give him, and the Patriarch confirms this. But whether he gets this item or not will depend solely on him. Then he shows a sword, saying that it is the sword of the first Patriarch of Hein Harbor. And the boy is surprised that this is in front of him, and says this is unexpected, because this item never appeared in Inner Lunatic before. And even though he's a veteran player who has beaten this game 27 times, he didn't know this existed. He wonders why he would give this to him, and says he doesn't understand the situation right now, but he needs to get his hands on it, but he's a little taken aback by its appearance. And he says that it probably looks worn out to him. However, that sword accompanied the first Patriarch his entire life, and was also in its hands for a long time. And the boy then asks him to state the test he must pass to get it, so T tells him to hold the sword, and the boy is a bit hesitant. But he ends up grabbing it, and when he does, a dark energy starts to flow through it. He notices his mana is being absorbed, and only then does he realize the blade's color has changed. And T says that, just as he expected, he has already started to feel mana. But he says this is great, because it was exactly as he thought, and the sword absorbs its master's mana and releases it multiple times over. And so, he is surprised by this and says he thinks this won't be an easy sword to use. But then the sword starts to change once more, and he receives a warning from the system, because his mana is being absorbed too quickly. And due to the abrupt change in his condition, the Master of Acting trait is unstable. he starts to beg it to wait, because it's going to get dangerous if his mana is drained this fast. Then, T says that if he wants to receive that sword, he just needs to endure it for 10 minutes, and the boy is even more surprised, because he has to endure it in that state. And he immediately thinks that T is a total bastard, and T says that the name of this sword is Stormbringer, and so, he sees the sword's basic information, because Stormbringer is weakened, and it's stated that the equipment can go from intermediate to advanced class, and its special effect is that whenever he kills with that sword, he will absorb their mana and convert it into his own stats, and the boy is surprised by this, and the system says that after absorbing a large amount of the player's mana, the sword will discharge it and unlock its power. He says that this kind of information isn't important right now, but the system says his mana has been almost completely consumed. Then, they switch the energy source to the player's life force, and so, his life starts to be rapidly drained. And he thinks this is crap and says he doesn't care anymore, saying he needs to give up, but then, he feels that he can't let go of the sword. He thinks that the damned sword won't let him go, and T just watches his son suffering, and he thinks about Stormbringer, wondering what kind of item it was. It was a magic sword that gives great power to the individual who wields it, while also harming them. Then he says that the first patriarch used it to establish this family, however, at the same time that Hein Harbor became a respectable shadow family. Its descendants were unable to properly wield this sword, and most people would have already fainted from exhaustion the moment they held the sword, and lasting more than 10 minutes would have already been a long time, and he himself can barely endure it for 1 hour. However, even so, he ordered his youngest son, who hadn't even learned how to control mana, to hold that sword, and including a recent incident in which he saved his maid. Nox has always been involved in all sorts of major events that happened in that family, and none of it can be a coincidence. And he thinks that his son is evolving, and much more than he expected, and maybe he's as talented as the Sword Emperor, and he says that's why he decided to test him, and if he can endure wielding it for 10 minutes, then it means that Nox can become the greatest patriarch that has ever existed in his family's history, and moreover, the boy will surely surpass him. While the boy falls to the ground nearly dead, T thinks that eventually, the boy will be able to kill him, and the boy looks at him, and T says that, just as he thought, he was hiding his strength, and Nox asks what his father is talking about, and he says that the sword is now the boy's, but at this, Nox gets pissed off, asking him to at least return his life force before he leaves. And 3 days later, on the Shader subjugation trip, they continue walking, and Dit says that she had a lot of things to bring, but it's a good thing they have that dimensional bag that can hold everything. And Nox is annoyed, and Dit says that he was really looking forward to coming on this mission, but he still seems to be in a bad mood, and she wonders why, and the boy keeps sighing and says that, even though T gave him another item besides Stormbringer, he's not the least bit grateful, after having seen his life force drain away, and even though he's irritated, he notices that Gray really brought a lot of stuff, and he starts talking about the techniques he learned at the academy. Nox says that even though he let him come along on the condition that he carry all this, it's still a bit much, but since he's gonna make a hero out of the boy, it's all good. Then they say that's not the way. Dick gets scared and they start arguing about which path they should take, and the boy realizes they already lost. Then they say they all get there one way or another, but Jen calls out to Hong, saying he guaranteed they would get there, and he ends up apologizing, saying it's because he's never taken this route before. And Nox introduces him as the captain of the Order of Knights, hired by Jen. Then he asks if they are lost and Daitri starts to get scared. But he tells her he wasn't talking to her, as he just called the 2 guys up ahead idiots. Then he takes the lead, asking Jen if they have a problem, and Gray says it's none of the boys' business. But Nox notices they lost and this makes Jen pissed, saying it's none of the boys' business, but Nox says he can lead them there if needed, and Gray is in disbelief, since he has lived inside the mansion his whole life. And how does he think he's going to be able to lead them to Shaders? And the boy starts asking to be the guide, because he's very talented, and even the family's vassals praise him for it. And Gray is surprised by this information, but Detri notices it's a bald-faced lie, and Jen thinks it could be a problem if they arrive too late. But he wonders if Nox will be able to get them there. Then he figures he can probably crush his confidence, saying that this way, it might not be such a bad idea to take a small detour, and he says that since the boy is so confident, he'll let him guide them for now. So Nox starts leading them, and they stop to make camp, and Jen starts chewing out his men, asking how he managed to find the right path so quickly. And he says the south hasn't even been explored yet, and even trained guides have a hard time finding the way there, and asks how his brother did it, saying he can't believe he found the route so fast, asking how that's possible. and Nox just watches, thinking to himself that he already knows this route, that for a veteran player this is a piece of cake, and that he's already visited the shaders hundreds of times, since the area is a strategic point. Then Daitri talks to him, asking how he found the way so quickly, and he asks if she sees what's on the ground, and she asks about it. And he says that those are the thick tracks of an owl bear. It's a monster that lives in the south, and it has the body of a bear and the head of an owl. And he says their habitat is the southern border of shaders. So if they follow the direction of the tracks, they can easily find the way to shaders, and the girl gets scared, asking if it's okay for them to camp in the old bear's habitat tonight. He says it's fine since they're afraid of fire, so they won't come to the camp with so many people around. And the men hearing this say they heard Nox had changed a lot. But this is too much, and one of them says this change was actually really good. Even wondering if he isn't better than the second young master who studied at the academy and Gray told them to screw off. Then he asks Shots if he said Hats and Alan lost to him. He confirms that they did, and right after that, Gray gets it in his head that he has to see how strong he is. And so Shots says that luckily they have the perfect item for it, and shows him a small leather pouch that definitely has something in it that shouldn't be there. Then Jen thinks Nox is in for a very long night. While they're resetting up the tent, only a small campfire is lit and the guard is asleep, when a monster starts to enter the camp. Then Nox asks if it has already started while holding his sword, and he gets up, catching Detri's attention, and she asks where he's going, and he tells her to wait right there as he leaves the tent very determined. And with that, once outside, the boy sees 4 ogres in front of him, and thinks it's probably because of that thing in his tent, and that stain there is mixed with the pheromones of a female ogre. He thinks Jin took advantage of the fact that it's the ogre's mating season to lure them there. And even though Gray intends to use them to intimidate him, this is going too far. Then he commands Stormbringer to take his life force, and so the item responds to the user's mana and desire. He starts to charge at the ogres, cutting down the first one. With that, he manages to dodge an attack, launching himself into the air and striking the ogre on his way down. Then another one tries to hit him, but the boy starts carving a path through them, cutting them down very easily. And he thinks this sword is really good. He was worried there would be a problem if it started to consume his mana carelessly, just like it did in front of T. But it seems he worried for nothing. Then he turns with a very malicious smirk, seeing the ogre that's coming at him, and he lands the first cut, feeling as if it's moving in the exact direction he wants. Then, he wonders if there's only one ogre left, which is already scared of the boy and tries to run away. He wonders if it's running away, but says he can't let it go, so he calls for Caw to go after the ogre. Then the horse comes quickly, and he throws himself onto its back, charging at the ogre and beheading it with a single attack. And just like that, he finishes the kill and obtains 1 day and 9 hours of life after defeating the ogres. And at that moment, Detri comes out from inside, asking if he's okay, and he says he already told her to wait in the tent. But she asks how they appeared at the entrance of the forest, saying they should call the night watch and wake up the rest of the group, just as a precaution. But he says that someone lured the ogres there on purpose. She's doubtful, and he tells her about his brother, saying he used the ogre's behavior to attack them, and that's why he set up that tent far away from them. And she realizes this means Garen is trying to keep him in check. And the boy says she's right and says that, apparently, Garen thinks he doesn't deserve to be in his family's line of succession. And that's why he thought it would be best to test his skills now. And Nox thinks that, compared to Garen, who is the eldest son, he isn't as strong. So he had no choice but to use such a cowardly plan to get information. But he thinks he should let him know that it doesn't work on him. Then Daitri asks what he's doing, and he asks if she knows how to attract even more ogres. He says it's by using their blood, because ogres are just like humans. They will come wanting to avenge their fallen comrades. And later that night, Garen notices the mana detection crystal is reacting and wonders why it's reacting like that. And he says this magic tool senses the mana of monsters in the vicinity. Then he wonders if it's broken. But he says his father gave it to him, and they're still at the entrance of the forest. There's no way a monster strong enough to activate the crystal would appear around here. But then he feels a tremor that shakes his body and someone calls out to him, telling him to run now. He wonders what all this commotion is about, with ogres attacking his camp, and a bunch of them appeared, and he starts to get scared, saying that ogres showed up here, and by morning, with all the chaos that ensued, he starts calling his men imbeciles, asking if he was the one who put that thing on top of his tent. But Shots says that's not what happened, saying it's strange, as it was clearly placed on young Master Nox's tent. And so, Nox comes out in the morning just stretching, saying it's a beautiful morning, asking if Daitra doesn't agree, and she tells him to have his breakfast, and he thanks her, telling her to sit with him. But she reminds him that she is his maid and cannot eat together with her master. But he says they re in the middle of a mission now, and it'll be inconvenient if she has to prepare her food separately. And it'll also be bad if a monster shows up. And he says that dozens of ogres might appear, just like what happened near his brother's tent. While laughing heartily and scaring the girl, he asks what's wrong, and she says she was just thinking that the master she serves is quite shameless, and he says she'll get used to it soon. But then, his brother orders them to take down his tent, amidst the huge mess, and he says that the blood-stained tent needs to be thrown away, as they'll continue to be pursued by the ogres. And Daitra asks what he's going to do now, asking if they should help them. But he vehemently refuses, asking why he would do that. But she questions him. What do you mean? Because they're still going to be followed. And he says yes, saying that even if they move far away from there, the ogres will probably keep coming after them. But the boy says that's exactly what he wanted, saying he's going to get a huge lecture, but he needs more ogres to appear so he can increase his lifespan, and soon they'll need these ogres too. So he stands up, looks at the sky, and tells the girl to get everything ready to leave. Meanwhile, one of the ogres is walking alone through the forest, until it's mysteriously attacked and killed in seconds. And by the next morning, Nox keeps moving forward and thinks that he has successfully assimilated the terrain of the entire area. He says that Shadres is still pretty far away, mentioning he was a little worried, but thinks it's all good. Just then, Grian goes to talk to Nox, asking what he plans to do about the ogres following them, asking if he'll be able to handle them. The boy says of course, and that they could even carry out a large-scale subjugation right there, but says that doing so would attract the attention of other monsters, so it's better for them to focus on getting out of this forest quickly. Saying the ogres won't be a problem anymore if they escape from there, and Grian thinks about what he said, that they won't be a problem anymore, thinking that he suddenly took command of the soldiers without him even realizing it. Then, another soldier goes to talk to Nox, asking why he keeps hitting the ground like that, and he says it's because monsters can appear at any moment, and the soldiers are surprised, and he confirms that they can appear in that exact spot. Then the earthquake starts, frightening everyone, and Daitra immediately clings to him as the ground opens up in front of them. And the boy thinks that they're coming, saying that the worm has appeared. It really does burst out in front of all the soldiers. Then he talks about the worm, saying it's a monster that looks like both an earthworm and a serpent, and he says that in inner Lunatic, it's known as a malformed dragon that couldn't develop properly, and says that because of this it can't use magic, but it's still very famous for being extremely strong, and says that even if dozens of ogres came running at it, the worm would still be the most difficult monster to defeat. But he says he was really looking forward to seeing it, saying the soldiers would probably be shocked if they found out he was trying to lure the worm to the surface by hitting the ground. But he asks what they could do, because if they were lucky, they can then possess the body of a game character. And he shouts to everyone, telling them to quickly hide in the bushes. Then they start asking why he's saying that, asking if they aren't going to attack. And the boy thinks to himself that the enemy of his enemy is his friend. And he remembers when he said the ogres wouldn't be a problem anymore if he got out of there. He thinks not, saying that he never intended to get rid of those ogres from the beginning, and they really do appear running after him. And Daitra immediately calls out to him, warning him, saying there are many ogres behind them, and he says she doesn't need to worry, because he has a plan, speaking to Daitra, asking if she knows which monsters the worm loves and hates the most at the same time, and she, obviously, doesn't know this and gets scared again, grabbing the boy who says that those monsters are the ogres, and so a fight begins between the two, and Nox says that they are the worm's main food source, but are always seeking revenge, so both are basically arch enemies, and the ogres really start to pick a fight with the worm, and he says that's why skilled adventurers know how to use this information, and the girl is doubtful about it, and the worm, in turn, goes after the ogres, killing some of them, but the others start to climb onto the monster's body, and Daitra is shocked by what she sees, because they're re-attacking each other, and Grian can hardly believe that his brother knew something like this, wondering how he found out, getting more and more pissed off with the boy, and Daitra asks if this means he just has to wait now, and he starts to pick up a rock from the ground, looking at the monsters and throwing one of them at an ogre's shoulder, and Daitra asks what he's doing, questioning what will happen if the ogres attack him. However, contrary to what she was thinking, the ogres end up dead, because of the worm that smashes them against the ground, and the boy's strength begins to slowly increase, and so his life is extended by 8 hours for attacking the ogre, and he mentally apologizes to Didra, saying that he needs to deal damage to the ogres at least once to gain XP, And so his life keeps getting extended over and over again without him doing anything. He notices it's over. Gra says that Nox did well to use the ogres, but in the end they lost, questioning what they were going to do, since it will be very difficult to kill the worm. And he thinks that to escape from there, he needs to use the others. But then Nox stands up, ordering everyone to attack and grabbing his sword. Then he says they can throw spears or fire arrows into the monster's mouth, and everyone is surprised by the boy taking the lead. Many of them start to follow him, attacking that thing, and so the monster begins to take a lot of damage, and he thinks it's his turn, drawing his sword and activating genius time, and everything around him stops. Then he quickly prepares his attack, charges forward, jumping on top of some things and attacking the monster, while everything is frozen, and he makes several cuts across the monster's body. Then as he lands on the ground, he lets time flow again and defeats it with a single strike, striking a badass pose and receiving a lot of lifetime, getting 10 days this time for defeating the worm, and his remaining lifetime becomes 122 days. Then the worm falls behind him. He is surprised, saying this is more than he expected, but he thinks it's good for a medium-sized monster. And he says that if it weren't for the ogres, they wouldn't have been able to kill it so easily, and so his stamina reaches 5, and the effect of the blessing of evolution begins to disappear. And he thinks that along with the curse of weakness, he also ended up losing the blessing of evolution. He finally reached 5 stamina, and he starts to get stronger and stronger. And some soldiers go up to Nox, asking if he was hurt anywhere, and he says no, thanking them for their good work. But they start saying that the boy was actually the best and cheer for him. Then he says it was nothing, telling them they have to regroup. But while they are celebrating, Nox notices something moving beside him, and when he turns his head, another worm appears. The boy is surprised that there was another one there. Then they tell Nox to fall back, and he starts desperately thinking about what to do. But then the worm is split in two with a single sword strike. And everyone is surprised by the man who killed that worm. Then the boy wonders what that was and questions what he's doing there. And apparently he knows this character, and he says that man is the sword genius, the strongest character in Inner Lunatic, Celsus's student, and one of the 3 sword emperors, along with Celsus. Then he starts looking at the whole group, speaking to Nox whom he just saved, asking if he doesn't even deserve a thank you. Then the boy gets a little tense, remembering that Paracelsus hates nobles with all his might. Then one of the men starts calling that guy a reckless bastard, asking if he doesn't know who Grain is, and so the kid apologizes. Then the henchman asks who he is, and the boy introduces himself by name, saying they can just consider him a mercenary. Then Nox thinks that because of what he went through when he was younger, it's understandable why he hates nobles so much. But the more important problem here is that the first meeting with Paracelsus was supposed to happen at Elden Academy, and he remembers that he's beaten this game several times, but he had never met him before the Academy arc. He foolishly wonders what happened. After all, it keeps messing with the timeline, and sooner or later things were bound to go to shit. And he keeps looking at Paracelsus as he continues to talk to the henchman, who asks for the boy's identity, and Nox wonders to himself what he should do. And after that they go on their way, and Nox goes to talk to Paracelsus, remembering he had said he was a mercenary, asking if he's also going to Shaders. And he says yes, adding that it will be his first stop. He heard that it's a great place to hunt monsters this time of year, and Nox thinks about the guy's objective, remembering that Paracelsus traveled to every corner of the Empire so he could advance his training before classes started. And he wonders if the kid is training in random areas, and Grain says that apparently, he's very confident in his skills, noting that Paracelsus also seems very young, asking if he's traveling alone, and then asks if he's interested in joining under his command to subjugate monsters, saying he's sure he'll pay him very well. So Paracelsus thinks for a moment, and says that since they re the sons of Von Rin Harbor, one of the sword emperors, he admits he's curious to see their skills, and Nox immediately tenses up at that, and that two-toned face henchman starts talking trash, asking how he dares to speak that way. Then Grain tells him to relax, saying he'll give Paracelsus some time to think about it. And Grain thinks to himself that he managed to take down the worm with a single blow, and for that very reason, he needs to bring the kid to his side no matter what, and that's how he'll get the soldiers' attention back from Nox. So they continue on their way, arriving at a certain village, and Nox announced to his brother that they had reached their destination, thinking that this place is Sheda's, saying that it seems even more deserted than in the game, and so, they enter a place, noticing several rats, and right after, a local resident, a somewhat thin and dirty girl, comes to talk to them, asking if they can give her something to eat, and Grain looks at her, somewhat annoyed, and just keeps walking, leaving the girl talking to herself. And Nox then looks at her, who is on the verge of tears, something that also catches the attention of Paracelsus, who dislikes Gryan's attitude. Then, the village leader comes up to them, asking how they are. Introducing himself as Tegan, he tells them he's the head of security for that village and recognizes them as Cian, Nox and Gryan, saying that he had been previously notified that they would be coming for the subjugation mission. While they talk with Tegan, Paracelsus thinks to himself about this coincidental encounter with the sons of the Sword Emperor, saying he had high expectations when he heard that the proud Rin Harbor family would come to Shada's personally for a subjugation. He remembers the swordsmanship Nox displayed, saying that although the boy managed to handle the worm with a somewhat decent sword technique, he still thinks they are just spoiled young masters from an aristocratic family. And he thinks it's a disappointment and says that, obviously, this town can't function properly, and the Order of Knights is busy embezzling the people's money to line their own pockets. The citizens are unable to defend their position against a wave of monsters, and it's hard to imagine they would be satisfied just by having something to eat. And so, Tegan leads them to a lodging, saying that since it's already late, he will tell them the mission details the next day, saying the inn isn't much, but he hopes they can at least rest from their long journey. Then everyone dismounts their horses and starts walking around the area, and Paracelsus goes to Gryan to talk about the offer he made a little while ago. Gryan asks if he's decided, and he says he'll have to refuse. And so Gryan is surprised by this, asking what he intends to do. Then questioning if the kid is going to fight a wave of monsters alone, and he says that, first of all, he will act according to what he had already planned, and second, he wishes him a safe subjugation, announcing that he's just going to take off, and Gryan calls him a despicable commoner, full of hatred, and he says that if a person is skilled, then they can get by anywhere, and he says that's how the world works, and rumors follow the competent, and watching him leave, he thinks they might meet again sooner than expected, noting that the kid doesn't seem to have much intention of leaving. And later that night, inside the inn, the boy talks to Dre, telling her to rest, because they were leaving early the next morning. Then when he enters the room, he starts to watch from the window, seeing those hungry children around a bonfire outside. And so, he goes over to them, asking if they're re-up for something to eat, and, from inside the bag he was holding, he takes out bread and gives it to them, saying they can take it, and the girl, extremely happy, asks if he's serious, crying as she holds the bread, and Nox thinks that he can't save everyone. So he thinks this is just a demonstration of Yan's kindness and generosity, and the girl cries nonstop while thanking him, and he says he wants to create a future where they don't have to beg for food, and, for that to happen, he first needs to survive Shaders. Oh, I'm telling you, if this little girl dies in the next episode, I'm dropping this series. I'll post a 10-minute video saying I dropped it, and you'll never hear about this one from me again. As he continues to give bread to those homeless orphans, Dre watches him from a distance, saying she already knew, because just a moment ago he was only acting tough, and the next day, Tegan speaks with them, saying that, as they should know, the southern region of Shaders usually gets infested with monsters during the winter, and that's why they always ask the Imperial family for funds and reinforcements. And Gryan asks if those things beside him are to protect the village, and Tegan says yes, but adds that they've been there for a long time, so it needs some repairs. And so, he notices there are several cuts on it, and Nox says it won't last a single hour before being destroyed when the monster wave begins. And he says that since it's just a sub-chapter, it was his choice whether to save that village or not, and he says that most of the time he chose to save Shaders, and the reason is obvious. It has a very high value, and he says that in the future Shaders will become a very expensive piece of land, and so. Tegan says there's something different about the monsters this year, saying that the number of enraged monsters has increased significantly compared to last year, and Nox thinks that these people don't know yet, but in reality, having more enraged monsters will help them later, and Tegan says the worst part is that some villagers have also seen a griffin, leaving everyone surprised. And Gryan thinks that a griffin really makes the situation more severe and asks where it was seen. And so, Tegan says it was near the backlands, and Nox says that one of the most important factors in this Shader's subjugation is whether or not they can drive away this griffin. And he talks about the griffin, the king of the backlands, a huge monster with the face of a falcon, with wings and 4 legs. He says it was designed to be stopped, not defeated, but he intends to defeat it, and the boy is getting pretty cocky, and so, Tegan says that what's ahead of them is the backlands of the infinite horizon, saying it's an area connected to the east of Tirali in a neutral zone, and is well known for being a barren land. Then Nox thinks that something is weird here, saying that griffins don't normally stay near the village of Shaders. He says they usually stay near Terralin, asking if Tegan knows the reason they re here now. And so, both Tegan and the guard are surprised that he spoke. and Nox starts to think he has a good idea of who the traitor is that will backstab them during the subjugation. And he thinks that the subquest has started and says that first, they will try to cut out most of the rot from the village. Meanwhile, still at the inn, that guy with the two-toned face starts looking over some notes until he gets angry and slashes them, thinking about Nox, saying that at first he wasn't worried because he heard Nox was just a useless brat, but now he's furious. He didn't think he'd fall for his schemes to the point of losing favor with Grian. He says he worked too hard to get into Grian's good graces. He says he won't let him get away with this, and while he's throwing this tantrum, he notices Detrier leaving the house and remembers she was the boy's maid, or so he'd heard. She's a commoner, and so he stops the girl and grabs her by the arm, and she asks if he wants something from her. And he says yes, that there are many things, but plays it off as nothing serious. Just saying he wants to have a little chat with her, but then the girl pulls her hand away, saying they have nothing to discuss in private, and so he asks what's wrong with her, saying that he may be a knight in the master's service, but he also deserves to have a little fun, and says the same goes for her, grabbing her again, as she desperately begs him to let go. But then she starts to think that if she rejects his advances now, young Master Nox will fall out of favor with young Master Grian, and he could get into trouble and draw unnecessary attention from the family. And she says she doesn't want her master to suffer, letting him do what he wants, and that two-faced guy says that thanks to her master, his 10 years of effort went down the drain, and he's going to make her pay him back. But then Nox arrives, saying he must want something in return, right? He says he'll pay for it, and then just cuts off the guy's hand out of nowhere, leaving Deter surprised as he arrives with his sword already drenched in blood. Then he asks the two-faced guy to tell him how he'd like to be compensated. At this, he asks what the boy thinks he's doing, his stump bleeding like crazy, saying that not even Nox will be able to escape the consequences of this. He asks if Nox really thinks Grian will just stand by and let this slide, and the boy asks if he's threatening him, using his brother, so he cuts off his other hand too, leaving the guy completely handless. And the man says that this is wrong, saying that even if Nox is from a powerful family, he can't do this, but Nox says no, saying that even though he comes from a powerful family, he's not the one who doesn't know his place, raising his sword, saying that the knight is the one who doesn't know his, and so he kills him. And Deter is shocked by what just happened, asking what he's done, saying that Grian won't let this go, and Grian appears at that exact moment, asking what the hell is going on there. Speaking to Nox, asking if he really just killed shots, and the boy says that's right. Then Grian asks how he dares, calling him a good-for-nothing, and asking how he has the audacity to admit to killing his knight. And Nox says yes, telling him he's only seeing half the situation, asking if he shouldn't get the details of what happened first. Then Grian grabs the boy by the collar, asking why he killed Shot, saying that if it's not for a good reason, he won't let the boy get away with it. And Nox simply says he saw the man trying to assault his maid and asks if, as her master, how could he just stand by and watch? And the girl is moved by what she just heard, and Grian asks if it was just because of that, saying she's just a commoner. And so the boy asks what he just said, getting pissed off, and asks if he can take responsibility for that, emanating his mana. And with a murderous glare, Nox grabs his brother's hand, and Grian wonders if that's the boy's power, is actually talented, and he says that he should have at least reported it first. But then the boy asks if he's forgotten, saying that he's the family's famous good-for-nothing. He's not used to doing things like reports or waiting, suggesting they leave this problem for their father to solve after they get back home. Then Grian starts to wonder if his brother wants something from him, saying alright, saying they'll leave the decision on how to handle this matter for when they return. And so Nox says it was a wise choice, speaking to Deter, calling her over and just taking off. Meanwhile, Grian wonders when Nox got so strong and says that the sword he was holding, he's seen it somewhere before, coming to the conclusion that he can't underestimate Nox during this mission. And outside with Deter, Nox thinks there's going to be a huge commotion among the soldiers, saying they've already split into factions, and are now at a crossroads, where they need to decide whether to follow Grian or the boy. Then he looks at Deter, who is still trembling, and asks if she's okay, and she says she is, but asks if he'll be alright, and she asks why he did that, crying, saying that if this matter escalates, he'll make even more enemies and be in danger again, and he asks if she still doesn't know what kind of master she has, saying he's the good-for-nothing of the Rein Harbor family. So no matter where they are, she should never lower her head, and she says yes, saying she'll remember that, drying her tears. A while later, Grian starts to wonder how that useless punk dared to try and undermine him, saying that at first, when his father put Nox under his command, he thought he would only cause him trouble. But now that they're on this mission, He's completely different from what he had imagined, thinking about that sword, saying it's probably just a coincidence that it looks like his father's sword, trying to convince himself of that, and he thinks he needs to keep an eye on him, but now that he's lost the chaise, he wonders who he can trust to watch his brother. Then another soldier enters, speaking with Grian, saying that the situation on the first floor has been resolved. But then he says that young Master Nox is completely the opposite of the rumors they heard. However, Grian thinks that Nox isn't the only one who's different, saying that man is too, questioning if he wasn't supposed to be the captain of a night order that has been active in that area for a long time, saying he even did a background check to confirm, and wonders how Nox, who has only studied from books, knows that place better than he does, and says he didn't pay all that money to get such sloppy work in return, saying that since the monster wave hasn't started yet, he's going to use that guy's night order a little longer. And he orders the man to make sure to get rid of the bandits and monsters in the vicinity, and to report if Nox starts acting strange. He should report to him immediately, and so, the man accepts the orders and leaves, and by night, Dieter is still with Nox, asking what he did during the day. While he looks at some potions, she asks if he, by any chance, went to check on the village walls, and he says yes, adding that they could barely stand. At that, she asks how they were going to stop the monster wave, but the boy just walks away. Calling for her, she asks where they were going, because her inn is in the other direction. He says he's thinking of recruiting someone for his team, saying that even in a small village like that, you can find an excellent character. And he thinks about a mage there who's making some potions, and says she's a character he recruited every time he came to Sheda's, a genius at making potions, and says that this means she's his potion maker. And while looking for the woman, the two of them have changed clothes. Dieter starts asking him if there's a genius potion maker hidden in a rundown place like this. And he says yes, but she says she doesn't understand, saying that if she's so talented, then she shouldn't be hiding in such a remote corner like this. But he says she must have her reasons, and he thinks that this reason is that this is the hidden route to complete the Sheda's arc. Then he says that, in the future, Alen will be working for another empire instead of Arcahank. And he says that if the player can't finish the Sheda's arc with this hidden route, then they can never find Alen again, and he points the way for Dieter, telling her to follow him and watch her step so she doesn't fall. And the girl pays closer attention, wondering if there really is such a person here. Then something happens. She notices a light, and the boy wonders if that's the place. And inside, the so-called potion maker thinks that she can't believe she's stuck in this backwater place, wondering how she ended up like this. And she's very different from what I thought they were going to find. And the two of them watch her hitting the bottle, and Nox says he's found his potion maker, and she gets a shock, asking who they are and why there are other people in this place. And Dieter hides her surprise, asking Nox if that genius potion maker he mentioned was that drunkard. And so, she falls to the floor completely startled and apologizes to Nox, saying she had no idea they were from such a respectable family. He says it's fine and changes the subject, saying he's there because he needs to tell her something, telling her to pay attention. Then he says that, at this point in the story, Alen is a great character who has the greatest potential for development, and is also a talented potion maker, saying he needs to recruit her and, despite having some flaws, he starts looking at the girl's information, noticing that she is 21 years old and from the half-elf race, and also has several other very good traits. Besides that, she has low-rank spirit magic and her negative trait is being an alcoholic. And the boy thinks that was to be expected, wondering what talented characters the useless member of the Rin Harbor family could possibly recruit. And he thinks none, let alone a genius potion maker. Then he says she's a bit problematic, but they have no choice. And she's confused about what he's talking about, saying she doesn't know why, but she apologizes for making him angry. Then, Dieter speaks to him, saying she knows she's about to cross a line with what she's going to say, but she doesn't think it's a very wise decision to hire an alcoholic. And he says he knows that too, but they are out of options now, and she notices that his situation is a bit complicated. And Alina gets back to the topic, asking if she can know the reason they came there to look for her. And he says he'll get straight to the point, telling her to join him, saying that if she follows him, he'll give her what she needs most. And Alina is doubtful about what she heard, but Nox looks directly into her eyes, and she ends up apologizing, saying she won't accept the offer, saying there's something she needs to do there, so she's very sorry. And at that, Nox asks if this thing has to do with her friend, May, and she questions how he knows that. He says that soon, May will be executed. Then the girl is surprised by what he's saying, and he says that if she accepts his offer, who knows, maybe he can even save her. Then he asks again what she has to say to him, asking if he managed to make her change her mind, almost through blackmail, But we were going to ignore that part because Alina keeps remembering what the boy said about Ma being executed and about him saying he can save her if she joins him. And Alina thinks about Ma when she stood up to the local lord who wanted to raise taxes. But she started to complain that they had already raised the taxes that month. Then even in this little manhwa they re-raising taxes. Yep, taxes are going up for everyone, buddy. And Alina thinks that Ma is her first and only friend. Then she says that people are dying around there, saying the imperial family is already sending him plenty of money, and on top of that, Tegan hasn't even fixed the walls. And after that, she was obviously taken away, and Alina thinks she'd rather they had taken her instead. Thinking that if she had been more aggressive at that moment, she could have done something. But she can't even rescue her friend on her own, and thinks that Nox probably won't be able to save her either, and she doubts the boy will go. But she won't be able to forget about this for a long time. And over in a tavern, the guards are drinking, and one of them asks the captain what that Gryan guy is like, and he says he's just an idiot. They were just pretending to be a knightly order, and he fell for it hook, line, and sinker, and everyone starts laughing at Gryan, and they say that, although it was a coincidence, it was worth it to raid the headquarters of the John Knight's Order. They even got that thing, the insignia, and with it they'll be able to pull off even bigger jobs. And he says that if they show the badge to the Hein Harbor family, they'll think this guy, who's a charlatan, is the captain of the John Knight's Order. Then he all receive benefits worthy of someone of that level. And even though things happened by coincidence, the henchman says it's interesting how their names are the same, and Ron says that if they take that Gryan guy hostage, they'll probably score a ton of cash from the ransom. Since it's the Hein Harbor family they're talking about, and they agree with that. But then one of them starts to get scared, wondering if it'll really be okay, saying that among the three shadow families, Hein Harbor is the most influential, and he wonders if anyone has ever survived after messing with them. The mood instantly gets heavy, and they start calling that guy a coward, getting pissed at him, saying that's why the others call him an idiot, and he starts to get cornered. But Ron tells them to shut up, asking what he thinks this place is, saying they're in shaders and even the imperial family has abandoned this dump, and they're gonna take Gryan hostage, get the ransom money, and then head back east. And no matter how influential the Hein Harbor family is, they won't be able to do anything in an enemy nation surrounded by sand, and after seeking refuge there, they just need to enjoy a life of luxury. And so, everyone agrees with their captain, but then, that scared guy talks about the brat from that time, named Nox, who's also with him, questioning if he didn't see through their farce. Then Ron thinks that he's indeed very dangerous and has a persistent personality, telling that guy to tell the others not to get involved with him until they finish things there. And one of them starts to scoff at the captain, asking if even he is going to get scared since he's just a kid, and says they don't need to worry, and they keep laughing, agreeing, calling each other to drink, until the candles in the place go out, and everything goes dark, and they wonder what is this, and who blew out the candles. And Ron tells everyone to calm down, but something wet falls on his face, and when he touches it, he notices it smells like blood, noticing that one of his men beside him has lost his head, and he's surprised by this, getting up, questioning what's happening. But then, another of his men is dead in front of him. He gets desperate, thinking they're enemies, yelling, "Who the hell is that?" And Nox appears right behind him, taking a sniff, standing behind him, asking why he's speaking so rudely, full of killing intent and malicious thoughts, calling Ron vermal. Jumping away, getting distance from the boy, Nox notes that they've hidden in that hole like rats, asking how he dares to steal from the Hein Harbor family, saying they overestimated themselves. Then Ron says he's mistaken, claiming that's not them. However, the boy says he already knows all the crimes they've committed, including the misappropriation of funds with Tegan. And he also knows they're retrying to use grain, and at this, Ron gets irritated, because he knows everything and asks what the boy wants, telling him to think carefully, because if he gets rid of Jin, his own position within the family would also improve. And he says that all Nox needs to do is turn a blind eye, just this once, saying he doesn't need to take any unnecessary risks. But then the boy, Nox, says he spoke all that nonsense while letting his killing intent leak out, and, after the last word, the sword begins to emanate dark energy, and with this dark energy, he decapitates the first soldier who was by his side, and Nox questions Ron. Did he really think the boy would be naive enough to believe that? And Ron yells for everyone to get him at the same time, and they charge at him. However, the boy easily dodges their attacks and cuts them down, killing one after another. Then, he starts to think he's totally screwed, because that kid was hiding his skills this whole time, and he thinks about drawing his sword, because this is dangerous, and says he needs to finish him now, invoking his mana into an attack stance and tells Nox to remember something, saying that he will only die because of his own arrogance. And one of the henchmen who's already on the ground, who probably lost a leg or half his body, says that now the brat is done for. And after all this preparation, all that glitter, Ron manages to launch a magic slash at the boy, and the henchman says that the captain's swordsmanship is the Su sword technique. But as the attack comes at Nox, he stands still, completely calm, and says that Ron is a bigger imbecile than he expected. And so, he invokes his dark energy into the sword and easily cuts through that attack. And the system says that he destroyed his enemy's attack like a swordsmanship genius. And Ron can't believe it, along with his henchmen, what the boy did, and asks how he stopped the Shader's sword technique. But Nox, of course, isn't going to answer that stupid question, killing that guy in an instant, and then calls Ron a pathetic worm, asking how he had the audacity to ask what he wants. And he says that he has already successfully learned the Su sword technique, just from receiving that one attack, and he already begins to invoke the technique, preparing to use it, saying this was exactly what he wanted. And after learning the attack, he immediately puts it into practice, getting into position and gathering his mana. Then the topic of genius is brought up, and he asks himself what it means to be a genius, appearing in a completely white space as he thinks. He questions himself. Does it mean to be a more exceptional person than others? And he starts to walk, and he thinks that if it's not that, maybe it's someone who can reach a higher level than most people. And he says that, from the moment he risked his life, he has constantly kept asking himself this. What does it mean to be a genius? Then, he breaks through a mental wall, starts to become a little calmer, and goes back to using the technique and speaking. Compared to the swordsmanship techniques he will learn in the future, maybe this isn't much, but that was enough to freeze him, and he hits everyone at the same time with that technique. As the men die, they call out for their captain, and he recognizes the soul of Shader's sword technique, and Ron says it took him 10 years of his life to master this swordsmanship technique. He wonders how a kid like him knows it, and with that, the boy walks up to Ron, stepping on his sword. His eyes are full of killing intent, and, seeing that, Ron gets scared shitless, saying that if he kills him, Tegan won't let him get away with it, and says that he might already know what he did there. And the boy tells him not to be ridiculous, saying there are no witnesses there to see Nox killing Ron. And he starts screaming, saying that everyone still alive will see. But then, the boy orders the bandit captain Ron to shut up, telling him to shut his mouth, and says he's simply murdering him, and he gets totally scared, asking what the boy is talking about. Nox says that it seems he still doesn't get it, saying that dead men tell no tales, and he says this will look like a common murder. Grabbing his sword, smiling, looking at Ron, and says that's what everyone will think, and just like that, he runs him through. And in another location, Tegan starts torturing May and asks if she's saying she doesn't want to work, and also doesn't want to be sold to other nobles. And he starts beating the girl in the face, asking if that's really it. And even though she's all beaten up, she tells him she will never obey people like him. Then, he grabs her face and says there's nothing she can do, saying the only thing people of her level can do is suffer on the floor. But then, the girl spits on his chest, complaining, what does she think she's doing? Hitting the girl harder, asking if she wants to be sold to a dark mage. And after being hit so hard, the girl starts to remember her past with her teacher, who said that even though she did her best, the girl still messed up the mixture, saying it might be a matter of aptitude. But it's just in this area that she might not have talent, and she wonders if that's possible. And with that, she says that from the beginning she had no talent at all, not in alchemy or swordsmanship, and much less in other things. And on the other hand, when the sister goes to talk to Elena, she is completely happy, because she has nothing left to teach her, wondering how someone so talented could exist in that corner of the countryside. And the girl is overjoyed by this, and May says that Elena was different, that the sister from the orphanage said that if she weren't a war orphan, perhaps, had come from a noble family, even a low-ranking one, things could have been different, at least if she could leave that orphanage. So she thinks that Elena was a genius in alchemy and, from the beginning, she didn't seem to belong in that place. And the girl says she also had an aura around her that was always shining. And despite that, she played with May all the time, smiling, and the girl says that radiant smile made her envious of her, and that's why she decided to sacrifice herself in her place. Because she was sure that she would be able to achieve much more than May could ever dream of. And she says she has spent her whole life suffering on the floor, speaking to Tegan, and says that whatever he wants to do after her death is none of her business. And she thinks that she doesn't want to become a burden to Elena. But then blood falls to the floor, and Tegan prepares to hit the girl. But Nox tells her to stop trying to get herself hurt, and Tegan looks, wondering who is there, and Nox, in turn, says that if the girl leaves there as a corpse, Alina will be sad. He appears, dragging his sword on the ground, leaving Tegan surprised, and he asks what the boy is doing there. And Nox speaks to Tegan, saying that according to the law of the imperial family, he will be executed. And the boy tells Tegan that he will soon die. And since his partner, Ron, is also dead, it would be better if he gave up now. Tegan thinks that this is unfortunate, but asks if Nox came there alone, and the boy says yes. And he says that it seems the young master of an aristocratic family is underestimating him too much. And he asks if the boy thinks he can beat him alone, and he already readies his sword. And Nox just says he doesn't see why he wouldn't win. And so Tegan draws his weapon and says things are moving faster than he expected. But that doesn't matter anymore, and he calls several guards on the boy, ordering them to kill Nox. And so, he remains still and just activates genius time, paralyzing all of them. In the 5 minutes he has, he quickly kills all the soldiers, one after another, lining them up. Then, at 4:58, he had already killed everyone. Then, at 4:57, he got close to Tegan. At 4:56, he went to the girl. At 4:55, he deactivated genius time, and May asks who he is. And he says he's Nox and tells her that after she wakes up, everything will be over. And the girl just rests, and Tegan turns around, startled, wondering if the boy had already defeated all of them. And when he looks back, he tries to charge at Nox, but starts to fall without realizing it. Then, he realizes his legs have been torn from his body and is completely shocked. And the soldiers who were outside are hit by all the attacks, falling to pieces, leaving Tegan horrified by the scene. And Nox tells Tegan not to even think he'll die that easily, now without both legs. He looks at the boy standing motionless in front of him with a bloodthirsty gaze, and Tegan becomes terrified and refuses to believe what's happening, because the MC is looking totally badass, with the face of a stone-cold killer, and this guy is not playing around, and he wonders if he really lost to a mere brat. In the great Tegan, who's not so great after all, Nox continues to look down on him, once again thinking about what it means to be a genius. Then he notices, as Tegan drags himself along without his 2 legs. He asked himself that question again while placing his sword near Tegan's face, with him about to die. The boy looked at him coldly, and Tegan thinks that Nox is, in fact, a genius. And he raises his sword, wondering what that means to him. But, even without an answer, he plunges his sword into Tegan's back, finally killing him. But moments before, while Tegan is still in complete disbelief that he's losing to that brat, he thinks about how he's the knight captain of the Shaders Mercenary Corporation, and his father was the one who stood out the most in the village. And he thinks about how all the men wanted to be like him, and everyone respected him. But in front of him, his father would beat his mother. Then, he speaks to Tegan, asking if he knows why everyone wants to be like him. And the boy replies that he doesn't know. And so, his father also grabs him by the hair and says it's because of his strength, and says that if he has immense strength, he'll be able to do anything, grabbing his mother and pulling her by the hair. And he says that this is the law of the city, and the frontiers of the Ark Empire. Then the boy asks if he is the strongest on the continent, and his father lets go of his mother's hair, saying no, that even he is just one of the countless citizens of the continent. And there are countless powerful swordsmen on the continent. And there are also many children who, at his age, are considered great geniuses, who are so talented that no one can even come close to them. And he says that's what a continent that has experienced war is like. As Nox's sword glimmers with his dark mana, Tegan thinks that the reason he survived is because he chose not to fight against those geniuses. And now, one of those geniuses is in front of him, Nox Von Rin Harbor. And he must be one of the great geniuses his father told him about. He's so talented that no one can even touch him. He laments that this is what his father meant, and he says that the only reason he's dying now is because he chose to fight the boy, and he's run through like a piece of meat on a barbecue skewer. However, Nox shows no reaction at all looking at it. Then, a while later, over at Alina's house, May shows up there with Dre, all beaten up, and the girl is happy to see her friend, and immediately starts crying in May's arms, saying she was so scared, because she thought she had really been left behind, and she starts to cry, but May tells her to calm down, saying that she's there, apologizing to the girl, and she thinks that she was wrong, very wrong, because she was selfish enough to make the choice alone, and leave the girl there. As Dre watches, Alina asks where Nox is, saying she wants to thank him, and Dre says he's having a little chat and will be there soon. And she is surprised by this, but Dre just says yes, saying he stopped to have an open-minded conversation with his brother. She thinks that, although that's not the boy's true intention, and over at Graz's house, where he is impatiently waiting for Ram to bring him more news. Little does he know he's waiting for a dead man, who probably won't be getting up again, and he wonders how Han dares to make a noble of the Rin Harbor family wait for someone. He wonders if something happened, but someone knocks on the door. He wonders who it is, and Nox enters, speaking to his brother, and says that if he's free now, they should talk, saying there's something important to discuss. So the boy asks why he would talk to Nox, but when he notices the bloodstains on the boy's clothes and the serious look on his face, Gan realizes this is no joke. Nox says again that they have something important to talk about, and feeling the pressure, he tells the boy to sit down, and in another scene, Rodwell reads a letter they received from Nox, stating that he has driven out the corruption from shaders, and has dealt an appropriate punishment to those involved. Also says that he requested a separate reward for this deed, and he folds that letter, which is apparently the reward request, saying there's nothing more to say, and T thinks about shaders, saying that corruption dominated the people of that place, but no one ever poked the hornet's nest, and the reason, he says, is quite simple. It's because it wasn't worth the trouble. However, it's not that simple, saying that this place is also a thorn in the side of the imperial family and, in the east, the last line of defense at shaders. So if that place falls, the monsters will start heading straight for the center. He says the central government allocated a large amount of gold and troops, and also sent mercenary corporations to defend relevant zones. And he says that a region that is useless still cannot be completely abandoned. And that's the kind of place shaders is. He says that worthless land is useless, and he says that all the bandit groups, including Verming Tiga, are too powerful, and it will be difficult to deal with them. And Rodwell agrees, and says that if the Knights of Wrong or the bandits of Arinha attack it, the situation will get even worse. Then he says that if they are to regain control of the situation at that point, they can no longer be part of the Rin Harbor family, and he just informs T, saying that he left some Black Knights with them to prevent their deaths. And the most important thing is what they're rediscussing. T says that what he's trying to understand is that Nox isn't generous enough to punish the corrupt people of that place for nothing. Besides, it's the same with the requests from shaders, saying that it seems the boy wants the imperial family to give him authority over the worthless lands. But he wonders what could be there of such value to interest the boy. And the boy says in his letter that if he can't produce anything, he will give up his rights as the youngest son of the Rin Harbor family. And T notes that this must be very important for him to give up his rights as the youngest son. And Rodwell asks if he's going to reject the boy's proposal, but T says no, that he will accept it. And if Nox really managed to defeat all of them, T can get full jurisdiction to grant the boy such permission. And he says that it's actually a good opportunity to see his territorial management skills. And Rodwell says that if that's what he wants, he will send a letter to the Empire and begin the process of obtaining control of shaders. So T tells him to do it. As he stays behind, he thinks about Nox, wondering how far his plans go, and apparently it's psychopath father, psychopath son, psychopath brother. Everyone in this family is crazy. And in Gren's room, when Nox tells him, he's in disbelief that Ron and Tegan wanted to kill him, and that the man was a subordinate to both of them. And Nox says that, unfortunately, that was the case, and Gren is surprised, because he's sure the family checked their identities, and wonders how they dare to take advantage of him and the Rin Harbor family, and calls them useless. But he becomes wary of Nox again, thinking that the most important thing is that he is much more troublesome than anyone. And the boy, exuding a completely suspicious manner, asks why Gren is looking at him like that, asking if he's scared. Then he notices the kid is being really cocky, and thinks that he's really messing with him. But he tucks his tail between his legs, thinking he needs to hold back, because if he doesn't pass this test, he won't become a knight, and says that in the end, he has no choice but to accept that bastard's proposal. So he asks what Nox wants, and he replies that, as expected of his brother. So he asks what Nox wants, and he says that, as expected of his brother. He's very quick at analyzing the pros and cons. He says he doesn't want much, stating that first he wants all the authority to command the soldiers under Grain's command. And so he accepts this and says that, even though he didn't give the army to him, his life is in the boy's hands, and he doesn't want to admit it, but still has no idea how strong Nox is. Yeah, the kid not only looks strong, he's got this rock-hard expression. Look at this. The dude's face is so imposing, you just know he's at full attention. Grain says that in return Nox must guarantee he won't die, and will give him prosperity. And the boy agrees and says he will guarantee his life and prosperity, saying that's 2 requests. And Grain immediately understands what the boy is saying, stating that he will give him the rights to the ores and artifacts from his mine, but says that Nox has to guarantee he won't do anything wrong, and he says it's a small price to pay compared to his life, telling him not to think it will be poorly managed. Then, he says he will be under his care during his stay in shaders, looking deep into Grain's eyes, saying he hopes he doesn't act rashly. Then, elsewhere, Alina is reading about the metallization potion and the corrosive potion, saying she's never made anything like this before, but thinks she can do it. And so, he says she gave a good answer. However, Daitra questions if it's really okay, saying his plans are very dangerous, although it's not something she, a mere maid, should ask. She questions if there's a specific reason to kill the griffin. She's always coming up with this spile like, oh, I shouldn't ask, oh, I shouldn't question, oh, I shouldn't doubt, but she is questioning, doubting, and asking, just saying, and at that, May also asks if there's a reason, saying they can't lose their hero, and she's already calling him a hero. This is heading somewhere good. I think it's gonna end in a harem. At this, Nox tells them not to be afraid, because if it were impossible, he wouldn't have made such a plan, and he says he understands their concern, since he can't tell them he needs to get something after killing the griffin, and the only thing he can do is lie. And the three of them keep looking at him, and he says he's thought a lot about it, so they shouldn't worry, and she accepts his order, saying she will do her best to prepare what he needs. And the boy thinks that killing the Shader's griffin is the beginning of the game, and it borders on the impossible. After all, until the day of his death, no one had managed to do it, but he gives a wicked little smile, saying that of course he wasn't included in those statistics, and he says he's going to explain the plan to them, saying he won't repeat it, so they must pay attention. And he talks about the secret route, because it's impossible to kill the griffin there with a standard playstyle, and he says this route is hidden, and is only revealed to players addicted to the game, the famous pro gamers, and he says that luckily for him, he is clearly an addict of this game, and has already completed it more than 27 times. And so he asks if all three of them understood, and they surprisingly do. And he says that this is the reason he has to kill the Shader's griffin, saying he will lose something in exchange for something much greater. At that, he tells everyone to get ready to start the next day, and speaks to his horse, saying that if he doesn't put his life on the line, he won't be able to survive, and he says that, unfortunately, in Lunatic, which is the world he was transmigrated to, only works that way. But just then, something starts kicking up dirt nearby and a monster appears, stomping in the mud, and a gigantic army begins to approach the wall, while the boy watches from on top of it, wondering if it has already started. And he tells everyone to get ready and tells everyone there that he only has one chance, asking them to remember that. And he also starts to wonder why all of this feels so new. And he thinks about the fact that he is now Nox and the sole strategist for that entire army. Then, Daitra asks if he's going to be okay, saying that he said so yesterday, but now it seems strange, and he tells her to shut up, telling her to trust her master, and says he won't die, and he jumps, wondering if it was at that moment, a moment when he made a promise he can't keep, because he has a terminal illness, and he descends by plunging his sword into the wall, throwing himself into the midst of those monsters. Then, he throws a potion at one of the golems which starts to melt it, and with that potion, he slices through the golem, killing the iron golem, and his Southern Shades grasp proficiency begins to increase. He goes on a massacre, thinking that if he hadn't made that promise, he might have died, and the monsters get closer and closer. Nox tells them to come and be his stepping stone. He continues killing all of them, and he thinks that if the monsters keep advancing, he'll be able to enjoy this game even more. And the boy gets more bloodthirsty each time he kills, thinking that now this game is his reality. And in the midst of the battle's ecstasy, the griffin appears, flying over all of them. Then he thinks he's over there with a little smile, saying it's time to start, and seeing that grotesque thing heading toward the boy. The three of them are surprised. His brother gets scared, and in the middle of that battlefield with several dead creatures, the griffin is face to face with the boy, and Alina wonders if she's dreaming, because she's never seen a knight capable of fighting like that, and she wonders if this is humanly possible. And May says she figured he'd be fine, but to think he'd be so fast that her eyes can barely keep up. She starts to wonder what kind of environment the Rin Harbor family is, and Daitri says it's a family famous for its supremacy, but also a place where internal battles happen to determine who has the right to inherit the Black Sword. She says that's the kind of environment the Renraba family has, and also says she can tell the young master is the most talented among the candidates. And so Gren starts to get a worse and worse headache, and she says she still doesn't understand why the young master doesn't address the rumors about him. But she's sure the boy has his reasons, and May realizes that the rumors about him weren't completely true, as it seems he has his own reasons that require him to be a good-for-nothing, but she has no idea what they could be, and Dre says that's what she thinks too. And she says that's why they should keep things as they are. And she's sure there's a good reason for him to play this part, saying that he's a very intelligent person, but then Alina goes to the girl asking if she wants her to hide who he really is, telling her not to worry, because they'll keep their mouths shut, and the girl is happy about that. But the griffin starts to scream, scaring all of them, and the soldiers start to tremble at this. And the boy comes face to face with the griffin. And Gra wonders if Nox is going to face that thing, saying he must have gone crazy. Then the griffin starts to attack the boy. He dodges, attacking the griffin back, which flies over him, avoiding his attack, and as it flies over, Nox looks directly at Gra, terrifying the boy, who says he'll have to play along and orders all the troops to wait until the griffin is near the wall, telling them to fire only when he gives the order, and so everyone obeys the order and prepares to fire. And Gra waits for the griffin to get as close as possible and orders them to fire, and that bolt flies directly at the griffin, hitting only its wing, tearing a hole in it, making it fall. And Nox thinks that to defeat the griffin, they need to neutralize its annoying flight ability. And Nox drinks a potion to prepare, consuming the metallization potion. His stamina temporarily increases by 1, and he says he had already made the necessary preparations in advance. And then he remembers when Nox made the request to him, a request he found dishonorable, and he was incredulous that Nox was asking him to do something as lowly as making ballistas. So he says they can ask someone else to do it. But the boy thinks for a moment and says that if he does it, it would be the same as fighting the griffin on the battlefield. So Gra immediately changes his mind, asking how many ballistas he needs. In the present, Nox states that he already knew Gra was someone with good instincts, and that he would be useful. While the griffin is on the ground all weakened, he notices the boy approaching, and thinks that the only thing left is for Helena's potion to prove its worth. Then the griffin sees the boy and starts to fly again, but as it takes flight, it remembers the hole in its wing and looks to the side, falling to the ground again. Then Nox asks if it's frustrated because things aren't going the way it wanted, and the griffin starts to get even more pissed off. And Nox states that he can understand why, because normally these wounds would be nothing to it, since a griffin is a high-level monster, and as the griffin gets up, startled, that hole in its wing gets worse and worse. Nox says that the ballista that pierced its wing was imbued with many liters of a poison made especially for it. And the griffin starts to drool more and more, its expression turning very grim. Nox says he's eager to see what awaits it, saying that it will really start to take effect in 5 minutes. Then the griffin raises its paw to attack the boy, and so he activates Genius Time once more with his psychotic look on his face, and says that 5 minutes is all he needs. As that claw comes towards the boy, he thinks that this pressure, without a doubt, is different from the game, but he starts to slice up the entire griffin, using Genius Time, and says that he won't be the one to die. And the griffin suffers numerous wounds, being cut all over its body, and the boy appears behind it saying that at least he won't be the one to die.
And he shouts grain!
But meanwhile, the boy is wondering if that's the same Nox he used to know. Then he orders them to fire on the griffin again, and once again it's hit in its 2 wings. Nox goes into ecstasy over this, and that dark energy starts to surround him, and the sword glows with dark energy in his hand. And he says it's time to put an end to this. That last panel was insane. The Messi is finally breaking out. Things are getting good. I just want to see where this is going and how much XP and lifespan he'll gain if he doesn't gain at least 1 month of life.
I be damned!
And with the griffin's second fall, all the soldiers are surprised, as are the 3 up there, and Nox once again gathers that dark energy in his sword and uses black execution, charging at the griffin with everything he's got, and it even tries to do something. But Nox cuts off the leg it extended to strike the boy with its claw and charges at the griffin, which can only look at the boy, and he splits the creature in 2 with a single attack, putting on a show and proving what he's capable of. And so Genius Time starts moving again, and he's completely exhausted, about to collapse. But then the remaining monsters simply run away in fear of the boy, and everyone who is watching the fight and cheering for Nox starts to give the boy a standing ovation, and he gains 60 days after defeating the griffin, and his remaining lifespan is 180 days. And all the villagers start to get happy, because they'll live for a while longer. And his brother is very happy with the boy's performance. However, while he's acting tough, Grain wonders how this is possible, because the griffin is a high-level monster, so a monster like that staggering, because of a brat, would be incredible. He says it would take at least someone at the level of an academy professor to defeat this beast so easily. So he gets frustrated, but ends up realizing he has no choice but to acknowledge the boy's strength. Then he thinks about Nox, saying that if what he's shown so far is true, then he could bring about a major change in the succession race within the family. And he even gets frustrated, but thinks he needs to make sure he's on the right side. And he goes down to Nox, seeing the bloodbath down there, and he says he'll take it from here and will take the griffin's body safely inside. And he'll be in charge of distributing the loot as he sees fit. And Nox doesn't quite understand what he's saying, and Grain tells him to get some rest. Then the boy notices that this really scared his brother. thinking that this is great. But he soon forgets about it and gets to the good part, thinking that it's time to use the hidden rewards. And in front of him, the information for the item he obtained appears, and here is the Griffin's heart, of the miscellaneous category and advanced grade. So the special effect is that the heart of the desert outlaw Griffin can be transformed into an elixir. An elixir that improves your agility and stamina and, depending on how good the alchemist is, they can decide whether it increases or decreases these stats, and he takes this heart to her, and she says he was right, because the power of wind can be found in that heart, and if they make good use of this, they could create elixirs or equipment they've only heard about in rumors. However, the boy says he doesn't have much time, saying he's going to use that heart to make an elixir, asking her how long it will take, and she says it depends on the situation, but with the tools she has now, that could take a while. So he says he'll provide all the tools she needs and will also take the opportunity to make an offer to both of them, saying he'd like to hire them as servants for the Rin Harbor family, but the girl says they are both commoners, and he asks since when that matters, saying that if they have something he needs, then he'll make use of it, and there's no reason for them not to use him as well. But then he gets serious, saying that of course he would never allow a dog to bite its owner, and he also thinks that no one is capable of using the monster core properly, especially if it's an item that's never been seen before. It's obtained by defeating a hidden boss that wasn't supposed to be defeated, and he says that working with it would be impossible for anyone who wasn't a genius. Then she says that wouldn't happen, because he saved their lives, and Alina says they will trust him and follow him for the rest of their lives. Then he says he liked that answer, saying that for a beginner, he obtained 2 twin characters. I'm telling you, this is heading towards a harem, man. This author is a man of culture, a good man, and he tells them they will leave in 3 days, telling them to get ready, and that the elixir will be created in secret after they return to the family estate. He doesn't want anyone else to see it, and he asks if they understand what he's saying, and they obviously agree, and he starts walking with Drea, until they reach a point where she stops and says he's very different from the rumors, and he asks what she means by that, and she talks about the part about him being selfish and only thinking of himself, and says she knows, at least, that's not true, but asks if he can promise her one thing, saying that no one knows when it will happen, but when things get difficult one day, he must please tell her if she can be of use, even with her lower status. After all, she doesn't know why so many people dislike him, and he, seeing this, says it's okay, saying he'll do that when the day comes. And he asks if she's going to stay there, saying it will get very cold at night, so he tells her to go, because it would be terrible if they caught a cold. And so she starts smiling again, following him once more. However, upon arriving at the inn, she becomes uncomfortable again. And he says he knows what she's thinking, but she shouldn't say anything, saying that it's humiliating, and she says it's okay, because things like that can happen, and he's in a growth phase, after all, and he becomes shy again, and so he gets 2 negative status, a level 2 cold, due to the constant sickness level 3, and also a negative effect of chronic cough level 4. And he thinks this is ridiculous. Man, I was just about to comment that it was too weird, because the kid got better all of a sudden. He doesn't get sick anymore, doesn't break anything anymore. It's a good thing the author remembered that the beginning of the story was about him dying. And so, some time later, they return to the Rin Harbor family and announce their arrival. And Rodol comes to greet him at the door and asks if they are the new servants of young Master Nox. And they say yes, then start gossiping about him, asking if he couldn't control himself and brought more women again. And to this time, come on people, stop with the judgment. It's 2024, get with the times. Let's stop this prejudice. So they start saying that old habits die hard, but then, as if they weren't shouting, they tell someone to keep it down, because they don't want to get into trouble. Then they say it wouldn't be strange if he were beheaded, and an old man starts talking about the boy's experience with women, saying it wasn't like that in his day. And they start saying it was probably a lie that he cleared the forest of the missing child. However, they say the patriarch said it's all true,